Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
Arriving at the Harrow's Edge, Shiro looked up at the sky and raised an eyebrow. Harrow's Edge was a giant mountain range that was filled with dangers around every corner. Even the common monsters that roamed the area were level 50. Since the common monsters are level 50, the wyvern itself should be higher than level 50. Either that, or it has a title that makes it stronger than the monsters here. Shiro thought to herself. Crouching down slightly, Shiro inserted mana into her legs and leapt up into the air. Tapping her necklace, she summoned her swords and used them as platforms to launch herself higher into the air. Once she was above the highest point of Harrow's Edge, she sent out a surge of mana to scout out the premises. However, once her mana hit a barrier of sorts, Shiro frowned. A detection field, huh? The wyvern is at least level 60. She muttered. Wyverns were able to lay down a detection field that would inform them of any intruders when they reached level 60. It was also one of the ways for them to know if anyone had trespassed into their nest while their egg was still in its infancy stage. I can't break the barrier with my mana disruption bullets since the wyvern will know that something has entered. Landing softly on the ground, Shiro wondered about what she could do. If the barrier is the checkpoint type, I'll be fine. But if it's the constant scan type, it'll be hard for me to approach it without it noticing, she muttered. The checkpoint type barrier is where it would only detect what happens at the edge of the barrier, but not inside the barrier. On the other hand, the constant scan type barrier will report anything and everything that happens inside the barrier to the caster. If it was the first kind, it was just a case of Shiro using Riftwalker to sneak past the barrier. I'll give it a try. I should be able to handle it even if it's level 60, Shiro muttered with a grin. Walking up to the barrier, Shiro narrowed her eyes before entering the rift. Exiting the rift just as she passed the barrier, Shiro smiled, seeing no mana pulses in her surroundings. So it's the checkpoint kind? She smiled. You've made a grave mistake, wyvern, haha. Flickering towards the peak, Shiro floated above the area as she looked down towards the sleeping wyvern. Flame Wyvern LVL 60, Noble Class. HP 20 000 000 /20 000 000. MP 30 000 000 /30 000 000. Hoa Level 60 Noble Class. Interesting. Shiro smiled with excitement. It was rare for a person to run into a classified monster, and for them to run into one that's of the noble class, it was a literal miracle. That's only if they could take care of it. But if they could take care of the noble class, the loot they'd receive would be more than worth it. Even Shiro was tempted to use one of the charges from her Calamity Dragon scale against this wyvern just in case. She had a total of 3 charges for the item after all. Floating towards the wyvern to make sure that she didn't make a single sound, Shiro circled it to see if a certain weakness was protected. Hehe, it's unguarded, Shiro thought with a sadistic grin. However, even though it's unguarded, she needed to make sure that she was able to kill the wyvern in one shot. Taking a step back, she narrowed her eyes and started to think about the best way to draw out all of her power in one go. If I use the bow, I can increase the speed and power. Maybe I should include Calamity's Trident since it's currently my strongest single-target skill. I should also modify my bow a little so that it amplified the amount of power that's being released. Stepping back slightly, Shiro narrowed her eyes before flexing her fingers. Lightning and metal twirled around her hand as it slowly morphed into the shape of a bow. Narrowing her eyes, Shiro made sure that she reduced the amount of mana being pulsed outwards as to not wake up the dragon before she was ready. Once the basic shape of the bow was ready, Shiro started to modify it. Sonic Accelerator, Mana Pulse Launcher, Nano Wire Reinforcement, Electromagnetic Coils. *TZZZ. As she finalized the bow, Shiro couldn't help but smile at the fact that all her upgrades were completed without any problems. Nanotech Sonic Pulse Heavy Bow, LVL 48, Purple Plus. Plus 1500 Attack. Plus 1500 Arrow Flight Speed. Plus 1500 Critical Chance. Plus 1000 Critical Damage. plus 1000 armor penetration, plus 500 ignore defense. Skills: pulse propulsion, focus fire, rail charge. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to add any dragon slaying attributes due to the fact that she didn't have any skills like that within her database. Not only that, but she would need specific materials to merge with her bow in order for it to gain the Dragon Slayer attribute. As for why she needed dragon slaying attributes and not wyvern slaying attributes, it was due to the fact that a dragon was the evolution of a wyvern. If the ability worked on its next evolution, the current evolution would be weak to it as well. Looking at the bow, Shiro couldn't help but hold high expectations since it took her 100 KMP to craft the bow. HA. Panting slightly from the mana cost, Shiro rubbed her eyes in fatigue. Now, I just need the trident for the arrow. That being said, I don't think a trident will be the best shape for penetration, she thought to herself. Tapping her necklace, Shiro summoned her 4 swords and arranged them into a new shape. Calamity Trident, spear form. Looking at the ice spear that was dyed in ominous black, Shiro reached out her hand and grabbed the spear by the handle. A little big for me to use, she muttered. Taking a deep breath, Shiro started to condense the entire spear down. The swords that were encased in the ice started to warp a little as they were being forced into a new shape. I don't need to destroy the swords, they just need to become a slimmer version of themselves. A rapier. A gust of wind exploded out from the spear as Shiro heard a notification from her system. New skill created. Calamity Dragon Arrow. Extremely effective against dragon types due to the power of the Calamity Dragon embedded within the arrow. Oh, perfect. Shiro grinned. Knocking the arrow onto the bow string, she narrowed her eyes and pulled back. As she pulled back the bow, the surrounding mana started to surge towards the arrow. Not good, she thought, since there was a big chance for the wyvern to wake up. Inserting her own mana into the arrow to help speeds things up, Shiro saw the arrow spark with electricity as the bow had neon yellow circuits light up on the main body. A blue fire lit up on the tip of the arrow as she recognized it to be the Azure Hellfire skill that she had. So the arrow itself will gain properties depending on the type of mana that's inserted. Shiro thought to herself since she didn't activate the skill. Propulsion systems ready, rail charge systems ready, focus fire activated. She muttered softly. Gore. The dragon let off a low growl as it was disturbed from its sleep. It could feel a giant wave of mana being gathered behind it like a whirlpool. Turning its head, it widened its eyes, seeing Shiro holding a bow and arrow that was currently emitting a fearsome amount of mana. Hello, would you stand still for this, princess? Shiro smiled. Fire, she said coldly as she let go of the arrow. Bang. The arrow drilled through the wyvern, sending out a spiral of flesh and scales behind it. Quickly slamming her hand down, Shiro conjured up an ice wall to block the meat chunks from hitting her. Yura. Thawing the ice wall, Shiro smiled contently, seeing a clean hole through the wyvern, but paused when she saw the wound start to heal. Oh, are you King kidding me? Tenacity? Shiro couldn't help but complain. While tenacity wasn't like rejuvenation, the skill the Yeti Berserker used, it was still an annoying weapon. Whenever the user takes lethal damage, it would heal it for 10% of the damage dealt. Since she had insta-killed it, 10% of his health meant that it regained a grand total of 2 million HP. Turning its head, the wyvern glared at Shiro before immediately turning back and tried to run. Shiro was dumbfounded by its reaction. Wasn't dragon types supposed to fight to the death? She thought, seeing the wyvern try to run away from her as quickly as it could. That's right, the wyvern didn't think about fighting Shiro and focused on escaping. Its thought process was, if she could insta-kill me when I just woke up, wouldn't that mean she can kill me normally as well with that kind of firepower? Looking at the wyvern that was flapping its wings to run away, Shiro narrowed her eyes and took a deep breath. Flexing her fingers, she created a second arrow. SSS. She took a sharp breath due to the pain in her links since each arrow took quite a lot of MP to make. Knocking the arrow, she pulled back and aimed towards the wyvern. Bang. Quickly turning its head, the wyvern flapped its wings and dodged out of the way. Roar. It roared out in glee when it saw the arrow miss. However, his joy instantly faded when he felt a sharp object pierce the sacred area. Cold illusion, Shiro muttered with a grin. Using the sound that erupted from her firing the arrow, she used that as the activator for the illusion to redirect the wyvern into the path of the real arrow. Asterisk boom. Level up. Drilling through the wyvern for a second time, the arrow broke apart after doing its job. Looking at the wyvern corpse falling in the distance, Shiro wanted to retrieve her loot but could only jog towards it due to the pain she was feeling. So I'm limited to just a single bow and 2 shots of the arrow. Shiro chuckled with fatigue, sending out her killing intent so that the monsters knew a more dangerous opponent was walking towards the wyvern's corpse. She was able to reach the wyvern's corpse without any monsters attacking her. Sitting beside the wyvern corpse, she wanted to wait till her mana links stop hurting before she harvested the corpse. Since she had gotten the notification for a level up, Shiro checked her stats. Name, Shiro. Race, Snow Girl, evolution criteria yet to be met. Title, Shadow Empress, Proficient Monster, 231/500 humans killed. Fratricide, 1 woman battalion, creator of the Frozen Hell series, incomplete. Ice Princess, creator of Style Azura's Path. Level, 49. Class, Snow Girl, Snowmancer. HP, 440, 000/440, 000. MP, 548, 100/928, 070. STR, 2800-3000, plus 100. VIT, 2800-3000, plus 200. INT, 5900-6000, plus 750. AGI, 3500, plus 450. DEX, 3000, plus 100. DEF, 1000, plus 100. Equals title bonus. Unassigned points, 500-0. Attunements, Glacial Tier 2. Lightning Tier 2. Metal Tier 2. Shadow Ed Tier 2, augmented with Calamity's Will. Balance, $850,950,500 Equipment, tap to display. Skills, Snow Girl. Tier 2 Glacial Magic, passive regeneration, blessed by ice, faded snow movement, glacial aura, glacial touch, glacial breath. Ice field affinity, cold illusion. Snowmancer. Nanotech engineering Tier 2, bow creation, shield creation, melee weapon creation, armor creation, hand cannon creation, shotgun creation. Frozen Hell series. Frozen Slumber, Azure Hellfire, Calamity Trident, Ice Drake's Feast, Ice Palace, Ice Demon's Calamitous Domain, Calamity Dragon Arrow. Ancient Healing Arts. Fire of Life. Style Azura's Path. Phantom Path, Azura Sword Path. Sword Skills. Refraction, Soul Sword. Other. Minimap, Inspection, Disguise, Mana Barrier, Lightning Magic, Tier 2. Metal Magic, Tier 2. Shadow Magic, Tier 2. Combust. Shared Skills, Shadow Buff, Tier 1. Ice Chain, Tier 1. Shadow Cloak, Tier 1. Shadow Talon, Tier 1. Rift Walker, Tier 1. Absorption/Redirection, Tier 1. Shadow Affinity, Tier 2. Dark Seraphim, Tier 2. Just one more level, she muttered. Just one more level, and not only would her MP reach 1 million, but it also marks the start of her class up into C class. But the most important thing at this moment wasn't her stats. Loot time. Shiro grinned as she summoned her 4 swords. Controlling the sword to cut parts of the wyvern off so that it could be cooked, Shiro stored them into the bracelet that she had received from the maids. Since the inventory inside the bracelet was a lot smaller than her inventory, Shiro could only store the best meat inside, and anything that wasn't tagged as prime wyvern meat was scrapped. Once the inventory was pretty much full, Shiro used collect to receive the rest of her loot. Material gained: wyvern bone x 100, wyvern scales x 200. Deposited into reward chest. User will receive at the end of the quest. Ignoring the notifications, Shiro was focused on the items that laid in front of her. A crystal and a set of armor. Just from the amount of mana she could feel from it, she knew it had to be something amazing. Kaiser Wyvern Armor Set. Wyvern Soul. Looking at the set armor, Shiro couldn't help but widen her eyes in delight. The set itself had 7 pieces and 3 stages of set effects. If she equipped each and every piece, she would gain an outrageous increase of 1,200 INT, 1,000 DF, 1,000 VIT, 1,000 AGI, 300 DX, and 300 STR. In addition to that, the armor pieces also included effects such as plus 20% mana efficiency, plus 10% magic attack, plus 10% fire resistance, and plus 10% fire efficiency. Holy sh*T, she muttered. On top of the stat increase and effects, 2 of the armor pieces even came with their own skills. Skill: Wyvern Force. Increase strength for a short moment of time. Plus 10% STR when activated. Skill: Hardened Scales. Plus 50% def and minus 50% AGI when activated. If just the base equipment could be this strong for a level 60 item, Shiro couldn't help but glance towards the set effects. For a set that had 7 pieces of equipment, head, shoulder, arm, torso, legs, boots, and cape, the final effect of gathering all 7 pieces had to be incredible. Kaiser Wyvern Set Effect March 7th. Plus 5% overall stat increase. Plus 500 def. Plus 20% fire resistance. Kaiser Wyvern Set Effect 6 of 7. Plus 1000 int. Plus 20% magic damage. Plus 20% elemental damage. Plus 20% elemental resistance. Kaiser Wyvern Set Effect July 7th. Plus 10% increase to DF, INT, STR. Skill: Wyvern Incarnation. Wyvern blood will run through your veins and boost your overall stats for a short moment of time. However, be warned that the backlash would hurt just as much as the increase. Plus 50% stat for 30 seconds. Minus 80% stat for 7 days. At this point, Shiro didn't know what to say other than amazing. While the level 60 armor couldn't compare to the stuff she made back when she was a tier 6 legend, she knew how much better this set was when compared to normal level 60 items. Hell, just the set effects alone could compete against some orange equipment of the same level in Shiro's opinion, especially Wyvern Incarnation. While the skill does weaken the user by 80% for a whole week, it was rare for a low-level set to include a skill that increases your overall stats by 50%. In the realms of C-class Berserk skills, this was definitely top tier. Unfortunately, all of this was restricted to level 60s, so she could only wait patiently to equip this. But there was also another worry for Shiro: the lack of life steal and mana leech. Her current armor set, the Blood Crystal set, gave her amazing lifesteal and mana leech so that she could sustain herself better in combat due to her mana links and low DF. If she were to remove that, she would need to be much more careful with the hits that she could take along with the spells that she could use. Example being her brand new Calamity Dragon Arrow. For a skill that took so much MP to use, Shiro would be allowed to regain the MP quite quickly by using her current set. But if she were to use the new set, that MP would essentially be gone for the rest of that fight. Then again, I suppose my current set will become useless once I reach level 55. Shiro muttered with a tired sigh. All equipment will become useless if they're used by a person 5 levels higher than the level on the equipment itself. So her current set of level 50 armor would be unusable. The worst part of that was that she couldn't salvage the set effects either. While she could recycle items for their innate skills as well as to reinforce her own nanobots so that she could make better equipment, she couldn't take set effects. Otherwise, she would have recycled the set armor that Helion made a while back. Shaking her head slightly at the fact that she couldn't use her broken life steal and mana leech set in the near future, Shiro looked towards the second reward she had received. The Wyvern Soul. Wyvern Soul. A crystallized soul force that belonged to a powerful wyvern. Apply it to a piece of armor or weapon to embed it with the mighty power of a being that could have become a dragon. Oh, so it's an item version of Calamity's Will. She muttered with excitement. Calamity's Will was an augment skill that will boost a certain element. As for Wyvern Soul, it was an augment item that will boost a physical element. Naturally, Calamity's Will was more valuable since it will stay with her forever. If she didn't have a growth-type weapon like Ascendant Dream, She wouldn't get this excited for the item since it would only last her 5 levels. Hee, I wonder what kind of upgrade you will get. Shiro smiled like a child who had just gotten a new toy. Taking off her necklace, she placed the wyvern soul on the surface and glanced at her system. Merge, wyvern soul, with ascendant dream? Yes, no. Immediately tapping yes, Shiro had to shield her eyes from the blinding glow that emerged from the necklace. Once everything died down, she opened her eyes and glanced towards her necklace. Previously, it was just a simple necklace that had a miniature version of her swords attaching in the center. However, it was now a finely decorated gem that had a silver sculpture of an array of swords within the gem. Upgrade complete. Ascendant Dream, orange, dash, ataraxia. Sword of Tranquility, orange plus. So the weapon now has a name? Interesting, Shiro muttered with a smile. Weapons that gained a name were similar to when a monster became a named monster. Their stats underwent an overall upgrade and a skill was gained under that name. It was also one of the requirements for a weapon/armor to reach red grade in terms of quality. Red grade items would have a skill that correlated to the name it was given. An example of a red grade weapon would be one of the weapons that her friend, Isilia, the Elven Saintess, had used during her life. Dainire, Sacred Sword of Nature. The skill, Dainire, allowed her to control nature itself. Of course, the range was limited to how much mana she used, and the same went with the duration. However, it was also because of this skill that she was crowned one of the most powerful people to have ever existed in Aria. As for the extent of control, it stretched out to everything around her that was classified as nature. Of course, it also included the sun since it was a part of the concept of nature. She could choose to summon down a beam of concentrated plasma or shut off all the oxygen in the area to suffocate anyone that wasn't her. She could also choose to collapse the very space around her enemies. Naturally, with the amount of power that Dainire granted her, the MP it required was also astronomical. Since the name is ataraxia, a word that means serene calmness in Greek, I believe, could the skill be something similar? Shiro muttered in anticipation. Ataraxia, Sword of Tranquility, orange plus, matches owner level, current level, 49. Plus 2000 attack, plus 2000 sharpness, plus 1500 attack speed, plus 1300 ignore defense, plus 1300 critical chance, plus 1000 critical damage, plus 30% elemental damage, plus 25% suppression against enemies of the same level or lower, plus 20% self-repair, plus 15% lifesteal, plus 5% mana disabler. Skills, element shift, ice, shadow, metal, lightning, dragon, ataraxia, bound, Shiro. Well damn. It even gave me mana disabler as an attribute, Shiro said, not being able to suppress her grin. Mana disabler had a similar effect to her mana disruption bullet. It would cancel out a portion of their spell / weaken the effect. For a weapon to have this kind of effect, it was akin to her constantly using mana disruption bullets. Element Shift also gained a new attribute, Dragon, and I also have the name skill Ataraxia. Element Shift, Dragon. When activated, plus 500 attack, doubles for dragon-type enemies, plus 200 fire damage. Ataraxia. When activated, you enter a state of intense focus. Increases activators' control over their body. The surrounding area is decolorized into simple black and white with weak points highlighted in bright red. Plus 30% damage when hitting the marked spots. User gain, 40% AGI, 30% DX, 20% STR. Enemies within your area of control are affected with minus 30% speed, minus 20% DF, minus 10% reaction, and a small chance to lose focus for a short moment of time, exposing their weak points. Duration, 2 minutes. Cost, 30% of total MP. Cooldown, 1 day. Backlash, lose 60% of vision for 5 hours, 50% muscle fatigue. Shiro didn't know what to say when she saw the description of the skill, Ataraxia. It was basically a guaranteed kill whenever she used it since the enemy would be weakened while in her presence. While she could see weak points, it didn't matter too much since she could find them herself. But the fact that she gained increased damage from hitting weak points was certainly something amazing. If all of her skills were to stack together, her total damage in a single shot would easily kill the wyvern. Hell, she guessed that she could probably kill the level 76 corrupted frost monarch that she met back in Kairosa. Even though they were 27 levels apart right now, her skill set would allow her to suppress Lienni, the corrupted frost monarch, and attack her at will. Of course, she'll still need to watch out for her pure mana manipulation since Lienni was able to injure her using a simple mana pulse. Looking back at Ataraxia, Shiro couldn't help but wonder why it wasn't red grade. If the weapon could gain a named skill, that meant it should be red grade. But why is it orange plus? She wondered to herself. Her best guess was that the weapon wasn't high enough level yet. Since it was only level 49, it was still within the realms of D rank. Orange grade D rank weapons could exist, but red grade D ranks were basically impossible. The purity and concentration of mana needed for a weapon to upgrade into red grade wasn't something a D-ranked weapon could offer. When I rank up, I should be able to upgrade the sword into the next grade, she muttered before placing the new necklace on her neck. Store rewards and final chest? All items will be received at the end. Yes, no. Looking at the notification that popped up when she went to grab the set armor, Shiro pressed yes and stored them in the final chest. She couldn't use it right now, so it was better than wasting her inventory space on it. Stretching her body, she marked the wyvern slaying task as complete. Now, I just need to go get the Imperium sword from the bandits. Putting the sheet of paper away, Shiro looked at the map and started to make her way towards the bandits' hideout. The Quinn Mountain bandits' hideout was to the south of Harrow's Edge. The distance wasn't extremely far, but it wasn't close either. It was easy to spot since the glow of their hideout made them obvious in the dead of night. Found them already. She smiled whilst dashing through the trees. Looking up at where the hideout was, she could see several guard towers. Well, since I also need to kill the generals before Lysandra wakes up, so that I can take her out for training, I'll just steal the sword and kill the chief rather than fight my way in. I'll waste too much time otherwise. She thought to herself as she started to use her phantom path to increase her speed. Combining it with faded snow movement and rift walker, Shiro was akin to a missile that made a beeline towards the hideout. Vaulting over the watchtowers without anyone noticing, Shiro sent out a weak pulse of mana to find out where the bandit chief was. Since the sword was important, the chief certainly wasn't going to let it out of his sight. Found you, she muttered slightly as she phased through the walls of the hideout. Meanwhile, the chief had just placed down his sword after some practice since he didn't know when the army would attack him. Just as he blinked, Shiro appeared in front of him with her fingers reaching for his eyes. URG. Quickly bending backwards, the chief felt sweat drip down his spine when the fingers barely missed his eyes. However, even though he dodged the first attack, Shiro wasn't bothered but instead readjusted herself. Flipping her body slightly, she hooked his nose and dragged him over her shoulders. Asterisk bang. Throwing the ripped-off nose to the side, Shiro coated her hand in corrupted shadows and stabbed towards his torso. The shadows ate away at his flesh like a hungry beast that finally saw food. MNN. The chief tried to scream, but Shiro plunged her spare hand into his mouth and destroyed everything inside, including the throat and spine. Asterisk Poochie. Grabbing the heart after piercing the ribs, she ripped it out and crushed it like a water balloon. A fleshy, bloody water balloon. Merely glancing at the half-dead chief with no emotions in her eyes, she froze the brain and crushed it into powder before getting off of the chief's corpse. Imperium sword, orange? Bingo, she muttered, seeing the weapon. Stepping into the rift with the weapon, she left without anyone knowing that she had killed their chief and stole his prized weapon. Making her way towards the demon continent, Shiro released the disguise she placed on her stats. Shiro LVL 49, Snow Girl. If she revealed her identity as a monster, the monsters would be less wary about her. Why haven't there been any demons or monsters yet? She muttered in confusion. Shaking her head, she allowed ice to spread out from her since a snow girl not being surrounded by a blizzard would be a weird sight. Allowing all of her passive to do their job, a blizzard started to spread out within the night. The sheer size of the blizzard made it very hard to miss. Not only that, but Shiro was also flaring her mana so that everything near her would be able to detect her. If I infiltrate the demon army, it should give me a few opportunities to attack the generals. Shiro thought since, unlike the other two tasks, the whereabouts of the demon generals were unknown. Flexing her fingers slightly, she created a giant ice tree and sat on the tallest branch while looking off into the horizon. They should have felt my presence by now, Shiro muttered whilst she crossed her legs. Sending out pulses of mana in regulated intervals, Shiro soon picked up a large group of monsters making their way towards her. Within that group, there was one signal that was much more powerful than the rest. So one of the generals decided to humor me, huh? I'll take it, she thought with a smile. Waiting for a short moment for the branch army to arrive, Shiro made sure her aura was that of a lofty princess that wouldn't bow down to anyone, even if it was a demon general. As they approached, she could hear the rhythmic beat of their footsteps. Halt! The demon general shouted out. He was a giant demon that measured up to around 7 foot tall in height. His skin was dark red in color, and his hair was black. His irises were gold, but the scara was void black. Pair that with a muscular physique, and it made for quite the intimidating sight for normal people. Keeping a hand on the greatsword on his back, he walked towards Shiro in caution. He could feel the danger radiating off of Shiro's body. Even though I'm a level 60 demon general, this level 49 snow girl isn't someone to mess with. How peculiar, he thought to himself. Xerix the demon general LVL 60. General. Ho, so another monster with a rank. Shiro narrowed her eyes since the wyvern was the same. Better loot then. She grinned. Looking at her cold grin, Xerix's pupils shrank in fear. Sweat dripped off his skin as he was currently being submerged in her killing intent. Even though he tried to fight back with his own, her killing intent easily overwhelmed his own. It was like a kid picking a fight against an adult. *KRRR. The blizzard started to expand in proportion to her killing intent. Ice formed on the demons' bodies as they looked towards Xerix in hope that he could do something about this. Gritting his teeth, Xerix took a step forward. Ho, for a general that can stand up to my presence, commendable. Shiro smiled slightly as she narrowed her eyes at Xerix. I thank you for your praise, he replied. He wasn't stupid and knew that he would need his brothers to stand a chance against the snow girl. As a demon who had fought through wars that brought him close to death, he knew the fights he could and couldn't win. And the current situation told him that there was no way for him to live if he provoked her. If I may be rude, can I ask what my lady is doing in the border between the demon continent and the Astia kingdom? Xerix asked carefully. Shiro narrowed her eyes slightly before opening her mouth. Because I'm bored. I've already killed the wyvern, and I'm lacking a bit of entertainment. Say, why don't we have a fight? You'll have the honor of entertaining this princess. Shiro grinned as her blood lust started to apply more pressure of Xerix. Ku, I don't dare. But I do have a suggestion for you, Your Highness. Xerix barely replied as he adjusted his way of addressing her after hearing her call herself princess. Ho, speak. Currently, we are going to attack the kingdom in a few weeks to destroy the final node that stops our army from invading the mainland. I can guarantee that there are definitely strong opponents within the mainland that will entertain you more than what I can provide. Xerix replied. Interesting, Shiro muttered as she put her hand on her chin. Then tell me what you were planning to do, she asked. That. I'll have to ask my brothers about this. It's not that I don't want to tell Your Highness, but it's simply too important to have the lower-tier monsters know about this. Not only that, what I know is only a third of the information. My eldest brother is the one to plan everything. So this elder brother is the strategist of it all. The king did say that these 3 generals directed the previous war. Why don't you take me to your elder brother then? Of course, if you're lying to me, I wouldn't mind using you as my entertainment. Shiro narrowed her eyes before retracting her aura. Flexing her fingers a little, the ice tree shattered into tiny ice shards while the blizzard faded away. Lead the way. Shiro smiled lightly as she landed in front of Xerix. Looking at her face up close, Xerix couldn't help but pause in shock. He couldn't believe that anyone this beautiful could exist. Sure, he knew about how snow women were known for their beauty, but the snow girl in front of him couldn't be described by the word beautiful. Seeing Xerix fall in a daze, Shiro narrowed her eyes and frowned. Before she could make a move, he recovered himself and lowered his head. "Please follow me," he said quickly since he could feel his instincts warn him. Nodding her head slightly, Shiro followed Xerix into the demon continent. Looking up at the sky, she could see the colors slowly saturate with an ominous red. So this is the demon continent, not too different from the demon continent from Arya. She thought to herself. None of the greenery could grow as there were dead trees and rock formations as far as the eye could see. As they continued to walk for a while, Xerix raised his hand and formed a magic circle. A lock and key, huh? No wonder the king couldn't find their location. Controlling the magic circle so that it floated up into the air, Xerix started to chant in a different language. Matching up what she is hearing with the records she had gathered back in her old world, Shiro started to translate the key of the formation. Sorry, Envy, Knifer, Chows, Tridim, Ulper, Mano, Carry, Errol, and Mick. A rather low-level demon concealment lock. Anyone that's 10 levels above the caster would be able to see through the concealment with ease. She thought to herself as she understood the lock after translating the key in her mind. Thankfully, I joined this demon back to camp. Otherwise, even if I did find this place by chance, it would be hard for me to escape unless I present the key. A small gap opened up in the barrier as Xerix gestured for her to enter. Walking into the barrier, Shiro frowned slightly when she saw the sheer amount of demons on the other side. If all of these demons attack, there's no way the kingdom will survive, she thought with a frown. Just from what she could see and sense, Shiro estimated the rough number of demons to be more than 300,000. Walking through the camp, they arrived at a giant tent. Inside the tent was two giant demons that were both taller than Xerix by at least a head. Ridur the demon strategist, LVL 65, General. Pilgrim the demon general, LVL 60, General. Brother, I have brought the anomaly back. It's a snow girl that may help us in our fight, Xerix said. Idiot, why would you bring the danger to us? Pilgrim shouted out. Settle down. Ridur narrowed his gaze at Pilgrim before looking towards Shiro, who had a fearless smile on her face. You don't feel like someone who could output so much mana. Xerix, are you sure she's the one? Ridur asked as he tried his best to show no reaction towards Shiro's beauty. I'm sure she's the one, especially since. Xerix left his words hanging as he gestured to his head. Ho! Ridur narrowed his eyes since he knew what that meant. She's dangerous despite her looks and level. Covering the lower half of his face, Ridur started to think as he tapped on the table with his finger. Xerix, I believe you said that I'll get my entertainment in the human continent, right? Where's the proof that you said you were going to show me? Shiro narrowed her eyes while keeping her fearless smile. Pilgrim looked towards Ridur as they made a silent agreement. Reaching out for his sword discreetly, Pilgrim was shocked when Shiro suddenly flashed out of sight. I wouldn't do that if I was you. This princess doesn't like people pointing their swords at me, Shiro said with a small giggle. Half of Pilgrim's body was frozen over with ice, while Xerix and Ridur had tried to help but were locked down by void black chains that corroded their skin. Ridur, was it? Seems like you wanted to test out this princess's prowess. Your little brother should have told you about my power, but seems like you ignored his warnings. Shiro narrowed her eyes while killing intent filled the room. Ha ha ha, a little misunderstanding. It's a misunderstanding, Ridur said with a smile. Ha ha, a misunderstanding? Then what if kill your brother? Can I say it's a misunderstanding as well? Shiro laughed. It was my mistake, Your Highness. Since you wish to have entertainment, I'll surely help you achieve it as we invade the mainland, Ridur said as he dropped his weapon on the ground. He had his suspicions since Shiro was only level 49, proved that he was still naive about the prowess of monsters. Snapping her fingers, Shiro thawed the ice and sat on the biggest chair in the room. Explain your plan, Shiro said as she relaxed herself on the chair. Her aura of dominance could be felt as it reminded the three of their demon king. You see, the current plan is like this. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. After Ridur explained the plan to Shiro, she leaned back slightly and closed one of her eyes. This isn't good. Their plan is much bigger than I thought. As it stands, they're basically at the last stretch, she thought whilst tapping her cheek with her finger. Every time they've invaded, their main goal was always to chip away at the kingdom's defenses so that they can win the most important battle with ease. The high-level adventurers that were holding back the demon invasion were constantly fighting without a chance to rest, so they're on the verge of death right now. They allowed the kingdom to stand for this long due to the fact that if they invaded the mainland years ago, the chances of failure would be much higher since the high-level adventurers would be at the peak of their power. Even if I killed these three now, the other generals scattered throughout land would still know the plan. Then there's also the problem of a mole inside the kingdom. They've been sending the generals everything that happens inside so that they could plan around everything that's happening. Why are you even invading the mainland to begin with? What do they have to draw the attention of the entire demon race? Shiro asked. The trio looked at one another before nodding. In the center of the mainland lay the corpse of a fallen god, Ridur said, dropping the bomb. Narrowing her eyes, Shiro glared at Ridur. Explain why the demon race wants the corpse of a god. It's for the demon king to ascend. Once the demon king assimilates with the corpse of a god, he will gain one of the many qualifications needed to become a Tier 7 demigod. Demigod. Shiro widened her eyes. Even in her prime, she was only Tier 6, and while she did speculate that Tier 7 was somewhat related to being a god, she didn't think it was demigod. A stage before god. Meaning there could be a Tier 8. 8 tiers, huh? So I was still far from the peak. Shiro smiled in excitement. However, her excitement was cut short when she saw a system update. Hidden main quest discovered. Fallen God. You have discovered that the reason the demon race is invading is to gain the body of a dead god. Stop them with everything you can. Protect the kingdom along with the main capital. What the F***? You want this princess to protect the kingdom and the mainland? I don't even know if I can protect the kingdom. Shiro thought to herself as she suppressed the urge to flip a table. Is there a problem? Ridur asked in worry, seeing Shiro furrow her brows. Just a small one. Follow me, and I'll take you to the place I was before coming here. You need to see this. Shiro shook her head and lied to the trio. She was going to take this chance to kill the three of them outside of the demon camp. This was so that the demons would be confused about whether the generals were alive or not. Are you able to tell us where it is? Ridur asked. He didn't want to leave the camp unattended since the demons need constant commands. It's a secret, but I can say that after hearing about what you've just told me about, there's a definite link between the two. She replied. Or could it be that you're suspecting me? She said with a frown. Feeling her anger slowly increase, Ridur quickly bowed. That was not my intention. The demons cannot be left without a leader since chaos will break out within the camp. The three of us can't go at the same time. Fine. Xerix, why don't you stay behind and I'll bring your brothers to the location? Shiro suggested. Xerix pulled a difficult face since he was curious about what Shiro was talking about. Xerix, you can go if you want. I'll stay behind. Pilgrim grinned and smacked Xerix on the back. Are you sure? Yeah, go for it. Pilgrim nodded. However, deep inside, it was because he was slightly scared of Shiro. Previously, she was able to freeze half of his body in an instant even though his brothers tried to help out. Coming to an agreement, both Ridur and Xerix would follow Shiro to the location she mentioned. Upon leaving the camp, Shiro started to dash towards the Hallow's Edge with the duo following behind her. Once they were far enough from the camp, Shiro smiled slightly and narrowed her eyes. Asterisk bang. Slamming her palms into the ground, a giant magic circle expanded out as an ice palace formed around them. What's the meaning of this? Ridur frowned as he and Xerix quickly created some distance between them and Shiro. However, she didn't respond as she tapped her necklace and summoned Ataraxia. 5 silver swords floated around her as she reached out and grabbed one of the swords. So another element means one more sword for me, huh? Interesting. She thought to herself. When the swords upgraded themselves, from consuming the wyvern's soul, Shiro didn't check the visual changes due to the fact that she wanted to kill the generals first. Alpha Nigeria Naira Bedes. However, quickly glancing at the swords now, she was surprised to see neon red markings on the guard of the blade along with black spines that decorated the sides. But that wasn't important right now since she had to kill these two quickly. Rift Walker. Flickering into the rift, Shiro flashed behind Xerix since he was the weakest. Azura Sword Path. Xerix wanted to dodge, but ice chains had locked him in place. Asterisk bang. Just before her sword could cleave into Xerix's body, a barrier glowed around him and protected him from harm. So it's the big brother, she thought, looking to her side. Ridur had a magic circle in his hand that was fueling the barrier. Even though her sword had managed to disable some of the mana used in the spell, it still wasn't enough to penetrate. Reaching out with her spare hand, Shiro gritted her teeth and tried to clutch her hand into a fist. Frozen Hell, Frozen Slumber, asterisk CRRR. Ridur grabbed his greatsword and tried to parry off the chains, but the moment they made contact, a part of his sword would be frozen over. Xerix, Ridur shouted out as the situation was dire for the both of them. Life Essence Unlock. They both shouted out as their bodies enlarged substantially with black runes spreading through their body, originating from the heart. HA. Asterisk bang. The duo slammed their swords against Shiro, who quickly erected an ice wall that was unable to block the strikes. But before their joy could sink in, it was instantly turned to dread as they saw Shiro's body fade into snow with her sword still floating around her. Careful, Ridur shouted out as he felt a deadly amount of mana being gathered just above them. Slamming his palms into the ground, a triple-layered barrier was erected with each layer revolving in a separate direction. Shiro, who had been charging up her strongest attack since the start of the fight, narrowed her eyes at the barrier and let go of the bowstring. Calamity Dragon Arrow. Asterisk boom. Ping ping ping. Breaking through all 3 layers of the barrier in one go, the arrow pierced Xerix and ended his life instantly. Unlike the wyvern, who was able to survive 2 shots due to his tenacity, Xerix didn't have anything to save his life. Che, only one. Shiro clicked her tongue. Ridur launched himself towards Shiro as he twisted his body and slashed his sword towards her. He already knew Xerix was a lost cause, so he wanted to take this time to deal some damage and make the most out of his brother's death. While Shiro knew her power output was outrageous right now, she still understood that she was a glass cannon. Therefore, there was no way in hell was she about to take his slash head on. Rift Walker. Flicking into the rift, she dodged the slash. Asterisk bang. We're both monsters. Why are you attacking us? Ridur shouted out as he kept his guard up. It's nothing personal. I just need to kill the 3 of you for a bigger reward. Shiro laughed out as she flickered behind him. All 5 of her swords were glowing slightly and created copies of themselves before slashing towards him. Ridur spun his body around to deflect the swords but widened his eyes when he felt no contact. Another illusion? He thought. Asterisk Poochie. Gah. The swords dug into his torso and started to eat away at his flesh while his eyes were filled with disbelief. How? He cried out in confusion. Shiro didn't reply but instead reached out with her arm and created a shotgun. But before she could even fire her shotgun, his body split into 2 and created some distance between them. Doppelganger-type skill, huh? Shiro narrowed her eyes. Crouching down, a magic circle appeared around her legs. Asterisk bang. The floor cracked apart as she charged towards the closest doppelganger. Ridur grinned as his body glowed red. Self-destruction, he shouted out as Shiro widened her eyes. Stomping down with her foot, a giant magic circle expanded out from under Ridur. Ice Drake's Feast. Asterisk Yura. A shattering roar exploded out from the circle as the drake appeared and swallowed him up. However, she wasn't done yet. The ice drake was only there to try to reduce the effects of the self-destruction. Rift Walker. Asterisk boom. Making some distance between them, Shiro left the rift and furrowed her brows. True demon manifestation. Ridur grinned as his body started to shrink. Asterisk boom. Coup. Shiro was launched back from the aura that was released from Ridur. Asterisk bang. Crashing against the wall of her ice palace, she couldn't help but cough up some blood from the impact. Quickly activating life fire to heal her wounds, Shiro looked up with some difficulty and saw Ridur in his new form. Asterisk thurf asterisk cur. 2 berserk skills? Measuring around 6 feet 3, black skin and red hair, Ridur grinned from the power he could feel coursing through his body. Huh. Releasing an ominous aura, Ridur started to walk towards her. Shiro narrowed her eyes from the pressure, since it made her feel slightly uncomfortable. Just slightly. This is the power the Demon King had given me. Now prepare yourself. Ridur grinned as several Tier 3 magic circles appeared around him. Flexing her fingers, Shiro quickly made 2 hand cannons that had mana disruption bullets loaded into them. Asterisk bang 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 bang. Even though she tried to break all of the magic circles, there were simply too much for her to destroy. Futile. Glowing with an ominous light, the magic circles reformed themselves and launched waves upon waves of attacks towards her. Rift Walker. A rift appeared in front of her as she attempted to enter the rift. However, Ridur grinned and snapped his fingers. Asterisk ping. Analysis complete, he muttered, destroying the rift in the process. Widening her eyes in shock, Shiro gathered the mana around her and slammed her hand down onto the ground. Asterisk krrr. Bang! Unfortunately, her ice wall wasn't able to completely block the attacks. Retreating once more, Shiro clutched her torso in pain and glared at Ridur. As the strategist, don't you think it's a part of my skill set to analyze skills and shut them down? Ridur chuckled as his confidence started to soar. That's not what I call a strategist. I call that a pain in the ass. Shiro retorted as she healed herself. Narrowing her eyes, she created a glacial ice spear and dashed towards Ridur. Humph! Scoffing slightly, he waved his palm and shattered her ice spear. However, it was a part of Shiro's plan since there were threads of nanotech wire inside the spear. With a single flex of her fingers, the wires wrapped around him. Analysis calm. Wait, what? Ridur cried out in shock as he realized that there was nothing he could reference her nanotech wires to. No records of anything similar could be found. What? Can't analyze something that doesn't exist yet? I'll tell you this now. Every one of these wires can advance technology by a huge leap. Refined by the minds of many talented scientists, it's not something you can simply analyze in a few seconds. Shiro grinned. It was like showing a kid high-level math problems. Sure, they'll be able to read it, but it doesn't mean they could decipher it. When the demon analyzed her ice magic successfully, it was due to the fact that he had prior knowledge to study from. Anyone could solve a math question if they've already been taught the method and knew what each number means. But if they were to be given a question that they had no knowledge about, then they wouldn't even know where to start. That was the current predicament for Ridur. He could see the fine inner workings, but he didn't know where to start dismantling since there were no gaps for him to exploit. Every time he dismantled a part of the wire, it would fix itself in an instant. It wasn't something he could brute force his way through. Nanotech wire plus calamity's will. Coating the wires in a thin layer of mana, her augmented shadow element started to eat away at his flesh. Arg. Struggling as much as he could, he tried to break out but failed since the wires started to dig deeper into his body. It was to the point that his bones could even be seen. I refuse to die, he shouted out as he bit his tongue and spat out a droplet of blood into the air. OSH*T. Shiro widened her eyes as she recognized the move instantly. Tier 4 ritual spell, life conversion. The spell would use one's life in exchange to summon a Tier 4 monster that will attack the enemy with everything they've got. If a person didn't know what the attack was, they would be too late to stop it. However, as a person who had already experienced this skill several times, she knew one of the many ways to counter the attack. Coincidentally, it was also the only way she could stop the ritual right now. Kill the caster before the spell can. With the lack of a sacrifice, the spell would collapse on itself. Twisting her body, Shiro created a sword using her nanobots and slashed towards Redur. But rather than slashing, the sword broke into shards and latched onto Redur's body. Consume, Shiro commanded as the nanobots entered a frenzied state and started to eat away at Redur. Arg! Blood started to pour out from his body as he writhed in pain. Gritting his teeth, Redur tried to use mana to destroy the nanobots, but all of his mana was fueled towards the summoning ritual. Ha ha ha, if you didn't use the summoning ritual, I wouldn't have been able to let the nanobots consume you from the inside. By using this ritual, not only are you forfeiting your life, but you're also giving up on the mana you own. Once this ritual starts, there is no turning back. How unfortunate. Shiro grinned sadistically, digging her hand into his torso in order to release more nanobots into his body. URG, what are you? How do you have this technology? He shouted out in pain. I'm just a Snowmancer from another world, she replied while ice spread out from her hand and started to crumble him away into frozen dust. After a short moment, Shiro stood up and dusted her hands. Looking at the pile of dust that was once a demon, Shiro collected his corpse and looked at her rewards. Armor, greatsword, and some miscellaneous crafting materials. How unfortunate, she muttered. Naturally, part of the rewards she got from slaying 2 demons were their heads, since she needed to present them to the king after all. How did I get his head when I reduced him to dust? She wondered to herself. Shaking her head, she dashed towards the demon camp since there was still one more demon she needed to slay. Sorry, Anvi, Knifer, Chows, Tridim, Ulper, Mano, Carrie, Errol, and Mick. Chanting out the key she required to unlock the barrier on the champ, Shiro made her way towards the main tent. As for how the fight went, Pilgrim's humiliation, one of the many victims fallen to method beloved by a certain user. Thankfully, it was done quickly so no one witnessed it. It was humiliating since he enjoyed it. The F***CK? Looking at the item that she had received from killing Pilgrim, Shiro didn't know what to say. A small part of why she chose to target the rear was to satisfy her sadistic urges. Cough. But if they started to enjoy it, she wouldn't get the same satisfaction as she would normally. Shaking her head, Shiro felt like she wasn't going to be targeting the rear for a while. She needed to recover after finding out that one of the mighty demon generals was actually such a closet pervert. Shame, she muttered while leaving the tent without any of the demons sensing her. She passed through the barrier effortlessly and made her way back to the kingdom. Checking the time through the sky above her, Shiro guessed that it was only 1 or 2 hours from the sunrise. Now that the 3 tasks are done, I need to think about where I can train Lysandra along with the whole hidden main quest bullsh***. She sighed. Just from reading the quest description that she received, she could see that there were 3 main steps in completing the quest. First, she needed to protect the kingdom. Second, she needed to fight off the other generals at different points on the map. Finally, she would need to stop the Demon King from procuring the corpse of the dead god. There were several questions that Shiro wanted answering but could only hold on to them for now. Questions such as what the nodes did and why can't the Demon King access the corpse even though he was a tier 6 legend like what she had been in her old life. Looking down at her hands, she could see herself shake a little from both excitement and fear. Excitement due to the fact that she now knew the fact that a tier 7 and 8 exist, meaning that her journey was still long. However, at the same time, she felt fear since she knew exactly what a tier 6 legend could do. Sure, she could say that she didn't feel fear since she fought monsters higher level than her all the time. But that was lying to herself since the power of a tier 6 was something to be feared. As she had demonstrated in her old life, even 100 tier 5s were nothing compared to her tier 6 might. Since this is just a quest, it should be fine, she muttered in an attempt to reassure herself. Furrowing her brows, she took a deep breath and gave herself a slap on the cheeks. What the hell am I even doing? I've F***king died already. I shouldn't be feeling scared in a quest when it's okay to die. She cursed to herself and dashed towards the kingdom at a quicker pace. I've already killed a Demon King once, so I know most of their skills. The only problem is which area he specializes in. Not only that, but it's probably impossible for me to defeat the other generals since they'll definitely be much stronger than the trio I fought today. As a Tier 6 legend, he's bound to have generals that are more than level 100. Some may even be more than level 200 in Tier 4 for all I know. She thought to herself, with a Q10. That means that I'll have to unify the other kingdoms in order to get the best grade in this quest. She muttered to herself, what a pain. Trying to unify all the other kingdoms was something that contradicted the way she fought. She would rather fight it out all by herself if given the option. But as stubborn as she was, she knew that toughing it out wasn't going to cut it for this mission. Landing softly on the battlements, Shiro stretched her body slightly and made her way into the castle. Once she arrived inside the castle, she phased through the walls and rested above the king's bedroom. She was going to tell him the moment he wakes up since she wanted to take Lysandra out to train the first thing in the morning. After waiting for a while, she sensed movement and knew that he woke up. Just as she was about to phase through the wall, she heard some giggles along with slight rocking on the bed. Wait, what are they do? You've got to be King kidding me. First thing in the morning? She muttered in disbelief. In her opinion, this was something that should be done at night since obviously, one would be tired after such an invigorating exercise, so sleep would be desired after finishing. But for them to start so early in the morning, she wondered how they made it through the day. Wasn't the king injured? He can still make up for the demand? She thought to herself while the duo performing the exercise seemed to get more passionate. At this point, she could even feel the ceiling under her shake. As expected from level 50s, she muttered with a slight nod of her head. Wait, no. I need to tell them that the tasks are complete. She shook her head and phased through the roof. Hanging herself upside down from the canopy, she coughed slightly at the duo who were in the middle of the act. I've done all 3 tasks, she called out. $pound percent carat pound $% carat and the duo cursed out in shock as they quickly covered themselves. Privacy, please, the queen shouted out. Not my fault that you two were going at it like wild animals. I could feel the shaking from the ceiling, Shiro said, pointing at her previous spot. Why the hell were you up there? The king asked as he quickly handed his wife a change of clothing. Well, I finished the tasks, so I came back to report. But as you know, you two were, well, you get the idea. Shiro shrugged. Impossible. You did this in one night? The king widened his eyes. Wrong. You should say that it's possible in one night, she replied with a chuckle. But the 3 demons were higher than level 50. It should be impossible for you to kill the 3 of them. The king cried out in shock. Just look at this then. Shiro sighed and brought out the 3 decapitate heads that were collected from their corpses. Looking at the 3 heads in disbelief, the king couldn't believe that Shiro had actually managed to complete the quest. There was the problem of finding the 3 demons since the location of their camp was unknown, and they could only guess from the intel they received. That should have taken her quite a while due to their secrecy. Not only that, there was also the problem of the demon army that was commanded by the generals. If she really did kill the 3 of them, the army should have attacked her as well. How? He asked in confusion. Assassination. Shiro grinned and placed her finger on her lips. What about the wyvern and the sword? Here. Throwing him a piece of the wyvern's flesh along with the Imperium sword, Shiro chuckled when she saw his expression of disbelief. Flipping off the canopy, she sat down on the chair and waited for his response. Hi's fine. Just go already. Just give me something to contact you quickly with. The king sighed. Oh, and also, take the sword with you. It should belong to Lysandra from now on. Got it. As for a way to contact me. Take this. Shiro said as she created a shard of glacial ice. Inside the ice is a thin strand of nanotech wire that would send a signal to her once the ice itself was broken. Crush this when the war breaks out, and we'll make it back as fast as we can, she said, handing over the piece of ice. Now if you don't mind me, I'll go get Lysandra now. See ya. Shiro waved slightly before flashing out of the room. Huh. Sighing heavily, the king felt like he was about to get older. Are you all right, my king? Why don't we, continue? That might be what I need. Oh, by the way, feel free to go at it with everything you got now. I won't be coming back. Shiro grinned as her head popped out through the wall. Pound and percent caret percent. Leaving the scene with the royal couple clearly disturbed, Shiro sent out her mana to locate Lysandra. Finding her room, she didn't take long to arrive before the door. Asterisk knock knock knock. Asterisk yon teach? Lysandra yawned as she rubbed her eyes. Yo, get changed. We're heading out for training now. Shiro grinned. Right. Nodding her head, Lysandra closed the door to get changed. Waiting by the corridor, Shiro glanced out of the window as she contemplated about what to do about the quest. Annoying, she thought to herself. The fact that she would need to make alliances between kingdoms was more than a headache for her. Plus, since she wasn't the highest level negotiator at the table, it would mean that she lost the initiative. Sure, she could threaten them, but that wasn't going to help her finish the quest. She would need to persuade the power-hungry and proud adventurers in order to complete the quest with a decent grade, or else it wouldn't be worth the trouble. I'm ready, teach. Lysandra shouted out as she rushed out her door with a giant backpack. Where's the half-tired Lysandra from a minute ago? Shiro thought to herself, seeing Lysandra brimming with energy. Store that backpack away in your bracelet. I know you have one. Shiro shook her head. But it doesn't feel like a trip if I don't carry the bag. Lysandra shrugged. Where do you even get that context from? Heis, never mind. Just put it in the space, and I'll bring you to the training area. Shiro massaged her eyes slightly. Grabbing Lysandra's hand, she entered the rift and made her way out of the kingdom. Is this how you travel all the time, teach? She asked. Yeah, it is. I get bonus movement speed in here, so I just activate the skill whenever I can. Shiro replied without looking back. It was unfortunate that her time in the rift was a little limited, so she had to constantly activate the skill when she left. But other than that, it was one of the best ways for her to travel since no one else could see her. Are you able to teach me this? No, I can't. This skill was gained through a special source that you can't access, so you can't learn it. But it doesn't mean you can't have something similar. Depending on your main elemental nature, you'll be able to develop a movement that uses that element. Shiro replied. My main element is light and another one that I don't know yet. Shiro's eyes widened instantly the moment she heard that Lysandra had the light element. Her breathing became a little uneven as she thought about the B** star that killed her in her past life. Teach. It's nothing. I don't have the light element, but I can teach you some of the light element movement skills. The concept should be easy for you to memorize. Shiro replied with a shake of her head. She's not the same as that B** starred. There's no need to take out my anger on her. She thought to herself. After traveling for a while, Shiro landed on top of a small hill. Where are we? Lysandra asked as she looked around curiously. We're near the demon continent. What you're going to do for the next few days, maybe even weeks, will be fighting demons and sparing against me. We'll rotate around constantly, so you can study both. Got it? Wait, what? I'm fighting demons? She asked in surprise. Yeah. Unlike humans, monsters will often have a title that makes them twice as strong as humans. So a level 30 monster would be twice as strong as a level 30 human. Shiro explained. However, even though this is the case, humans have been able to win due to their variety of skills. Monsters take a long time to become intelligent and even longer to be smart enough to develop skills. In the upcoming war, there will definitely be monsters that have quite a large variety of skills, so I want you to slowly get used to their increased stats while also getting used to fighting against me who has a lot of skills. Combine the two, and you should be able to hold your own. Another reason as to why Shiro wanted to do this was because of the fact that Lysandra wouldn't be able to make the most out of her power if she didn't get enough experience. If what the king said was true, once Lysandra got her powers unlocked, she would experience a sudden power boost. But if she didn't have the experience nor the skills to make use of that power, she would be almost harmless. Like a baby with a gun. Sure, they have a gun, but they're also a baby and vice versa. She needed to fix that before the war. Plus, if all things went well, Lysandra may even become her best guarantee in the negotiations to come. I see. So what do I do first? Lysandra smiled in excitement. First, I want to see what you can do with your mana control. Experience can be gained much easier if you have some foundations in mana control, Shiro said as she made herself a chair to sit on. So do I just do what I can? Lysandra asked as she didn't know where to start. It was like when you're cooking and someone just says to cook whatever. Out of all the options available, she didn't know which one she should pick. Then just show me an aura coating if you know what that means. Shiro replied after a short moment. Furrowing her brows, Lysandra concentrated her mana to wrap around her body. A golden mana started pulse as it seemed like she was covered in a layer of golden flames. Looking at the detestable elemental nature being wrapped around Lysandra, Shiro suppressed her disgust and walked towards her. Now this coat isn't too bad, but the overall enhancement and protection are too flimsy, Shiro said as she flicked the aura. Ping. Shattering into particles of light, Lysandra was surprised at how easy it was for Shiro to destroy her aura coat. No one had managed to break her coat when she was sparring the castle. Not to mention, Shiro was able to break it so effortlessly. As you can see, just by concentrating a bit of my mana on my fingertip, I was able to destroy your aura coat. With the way you've coated yourself, the defenses were weak and the main points of weakness were obvious. When you coat yourself in mana, it should be a thin layer rather than a fire. Standing back a little, Shiro flared her mana and activated her own mana coat. Boom. Wah. Lysandra fell backwards as the pressure that was released by Shiro slammed against her body. As you can see, upon summoning the mana to coat your body, you condense that in an instant to not only send out a pulse to push back your enemies, but it also hardens the armor around your body, Shiro said as she gestured to the thin layer of blue mana that was coating her entire body. The faster you condense your mana, the better, since the force created through this will push your enemies back a little, giving you the chance to attack them, she explained. But before you can get to this stage, we'll work on condensing your mana. Helping Lysandra up on her feet, Shiro gestured for her to coat herself in mana once more. I'll help you condense it first, so I want you to memorize the feeling, okay? She smiled. Got it, teach. Lysandra nodded her head in seriousness. Gathering her mana, she coated it around her body once more. Shiro placed a hand on Lysandra's shoulder and started to apply pressure onto her mana. URG. Lysandra flinched back from the pain, but Shiro didn't let go. Endure it. The pain of having her mana condensed by someone else hurt more than what she had expected. Arg. Unable to contain her cries, she howled at the top of her lungs in order to distract her from the pain. Focusing her mind, Shiro could only condense it quicker in order for the pain to be over quicker. Ha 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 ha. Panting heavily while laying her on her back, Lysandra glanced at the faint gold layer of mana that was coating her body. So I have to condense it to be this thin? She asked with fatigue. Yeah, just focus on remembering the current feeling. After that, we'll be practicing with forming and condensing the aura quickly so that you can deploy it quickly. Shiro nodded her head. Taking out a few chunks of wyvern meat, Shiro grabbed her sword and stabbed it through the meat. Grabbing a few pieces of dried wood and other flammable foliage, she used combust and set them on fire. The swords floated above the fire as Shiro started to roast the meat. She didn't have any seasoning on hand, but wyvern meat was still wyvern meat. Smells nice. Lysandra smiled as she walked over slowly. What meat is it? She asked. Wyvern meat. Wait, what? Wyvern meat? Where did you get it? Lysandra asked in confusion. I killed the wyvern in Harrow's Edge, Shiro replied while turning the meat over so that it was evenly roasted. Bam. What? But isn't the wyvern level 60 or something? How did you kill it? Lysandra asked as she lost her balance due to shock and was currently staring at Shiro with disbelief. Hee, your teacher here is obviously skilled, so the wyvern was nothing to me. Shiro chuckled as she continued to roast the chunks of meat. Don't worry about it too much. Once you master your aura along with your skills and battle instincts, you should be able to fight against stronger monsters without too much problem. Shiro encouraged with a smile. She honestly believed that Lysandra could indeed fight monsters higher level than her, because from what she had seen, Lysandra's stat points were worth much more when compared to the average soldier. They continued to chat for a little while as they waited for the meat to finish roasting. Looking at the crispy exterior, Shiro got one of her swords and cut into the meat to check if it was fully cooked yet. Not bad. Lisa, dig in. Shiro smiled as she handed Lysandra one of the larger pieces. Wow, that's quite a big portion, she muttered. You'll finish it easily, don't worry. The higher level a monster, the more mana their meat would contain. Not only that, but it would also empower your body, hence the stat boost that you may receive from eating the meat. Shiro informed her as she opened her mouth and took a big bite out of the piece of meat. Chewing a few times, she couldn't help but sigh inside her mind. Tasteless as always, she thought to herself. It was like she was eating textured water, an odd sensation, sneaking a piece of mana stone into her mouth that she had retrieved from killing the generals and the wyvern. She enjoyed the taste that slowly merged with the wyvern's meat. Oh, delicious! Lysandra cried out as her eyes were practically glowing. Of course it is. Shiro smiled. While chefs could make it taste better, the original taste was already amazing, since meat with large quantities of mana flowing through them would be very refreshing for the person who was eating it. It was due to the fact that the mana would be synergizing with the consumer's mana and create an euphorical feeling with each bite. While it could become addicting, the fact that adventurers burned off everything they ate made this addiction okay. As Lysandra ate the meat in a frenzy, Shiro only chuckled as she ate the wyvern meat slowly. As she finished the piece, she heard a series of notifications. Effects of wyvern meat are active. Gained 50 STR, 50 AGI, stackable. However, Shiro didn't care about this. It was the next notification that dragged her attention away from the wyvern meat. Level up. Level 50 reached. Class upgrades available. Finally, she muttered in excitement. Teach, you leveled up, congrats. Lysandra clapped her hands as she smiled. Thank you here. You make yourself some roasted meat. I need to see my class up options, Shiro replied, handing over a few more pieces of meat. Looking at Lysandra, who was busy roasting more food, Shiro smiled before turning her attention back to her class upgrade options. Only 5 upgrades. Seems pretty standard to me, she thought to herself. Snow Girl. Class up choices. 1. Snow Woman. 2. Winter Spirit. 3. Glacial Ice Queen. 4. Nanotech War Machine. 5. Corrupted Elemental Sylph. Narrowing her eyes slightly at the options, she was surprised to see something to do with her second class within the upgrade options. Snow Woman is self-explanatory. It's just a buffed-up version of my current class, but instead has more control over the ice element along with 750 points to spend per level, she thought to herself. Same with Glacial Ice Queen and Winter Spirit. These two are just evolved versions of the classes I was given before when I was level 20. Previously, when she had reached the peak of level 20, she was given the option of Snow Girl, Ice Girl, and Snow Spirit. Out of the 5 classes she's given right now, 3 of them were the upgraded version. I'm still offered the chance to become a spirit-type monster since I'm still D class. But once I class up into C class, I can only stick with the upgrade tree that they give me unless a hidden class is achieved. Snow Woman is a no-go since there's nothing after this. As for Glacial Ice Queen, though I know I definitely don't want to be a Winter Spirit, she thought to herself, since being a spirit was simply too disadvantageous for her. As for Corrupted Elemental Sylph and Nanotech War Machine, she had no knowledge about either of them. So out of the 5 classes, I can only logically pick 3 of them if I don't want to limit my growth. Glacial Ice Queen. As the royalty of all beings to do with ice, you'll be able to recruit underlings that will be stored within your personal throne world. All things made of ice shall be under your control. Race change. Snow Girl - Ice Queen. Plus 150% ice damage. Plus 80% fire vulnerability. Skills: Imperial Glacier Magic, Frozen Decree, Throne World Manifestation. Points per level, 750. Additional benefits due to user achieving 5S. Upgrade title, Ice Princess. 2. Glacial Ice Queen. Upgrade points per level, 750-1000. Extra skill, Ancient Glacial Weapons. Hey, I even get a throne world. She thought with interest. A throne world was similar to a domain skill, but it was slightly more powerful. If one had to describe it, a domain would be a pebble that someone threw in the river known as reality, whereas the throne world would be a giant piece of rock. The impact of the throne world was much bigger than the domain. After checking the description, Shiro turned towards the two that drew her attention the most. Nanotech War Machine. In order to reach the apex of nanomachine magic, you convert your entire body into nanobots. You are a living war machine. Merging classes: Snow Girl, Snowmancer. Race change: Snow Girl - Nanomachine. Plus 200% nanotech efficiency. Plus 50% MP and MP regeneration. Plus 80% defense against metal magic. Plus 70% elemental vulnerability. Skills: War Machine, constant repair. Upload/download, constant upgrade. Passive: limitless, ageless. Points per level: 800. Additional benefits due to user achieving 5S. Skill: constant adaptation. Shiro frowned as she read the information the system provided about this class. On one hand, she was given the chance to become ageless and limitless along with the skill adaptation. As for what the skill did, it allowed her to adapt to the type of element/damage the opponent caused. However, and this was a big however, was the fact that she would no longer be classed as a living being. Replacing her entire body with machinery and constantly uploading the main copy and making clones repulsed her to no end. It was basically what the scientists did when they were trying to make the class. Experiment: upload the data. Download the data onto a new body before experimenting on new subjects again. It was akin to throwing away her sense of self, which she didn't want. That only left her with the final class-up option. Corrupted Elemental Sylph. You become the being that controls the elements, one that embodies grace and might at the same time. The Elemental Sylph. However, due to your nature, the once graceful Sylph has fallen to corruption. Race change: Snow Girl - Corrupted Fae. Plus 150% elemental damage. Plus 90% dark affinity. Plus 50% light vulnerability. Plus 30% MP regeneration. Plus 20% elemental resistance. Plus 15% hostility from light-based enemies. Skills: Corrupted Element Shift. Passive: Draining Touch. Points per level: 750. Additional benefits due to user achieving 5S. Title gained: Corrupted War Maiden. Upgrade points per level: 750-1000. Interesting. She smiled seeing the skill descriptions. Corrupted Element Shift was obvious since her sword has the skill, Element Shift, and she could already guess what it did. However, Draining Touch helped her out a lot in terms of self-sustain. Draining Touch. A chance to drain a portion of MP and HP from your enemies every time you make contact. But in the end, the most surprising benefit was still the title, Corrupted War Maiden. Title: Corrupted War Maiden. Percent-based increments to your stats the longer you fight for. Increased effectiveness when attacking light-based enemies. The title allowed her to gain more power as the fight continues, which in most cases is very helpful, especially against tenacious monsters that she couldn't kill quickly. Overall, it was a close tie between Glacial Ice Queen and Corrupted Elemental Sylph, as both classes have their benefits. Ice Queen for the extremity of an element, while Elemental Sylph amplified her prowess with magic as a whole. Decisions, HM. It can only be you. She grinned before tapping yes on one of the classes. Class upgrade option confirmed. Class upgrade option confirmed. Corrupted Elemental Sylph. The reason as to why she chose this class was due to the fact that it gave her more diversity when compared to choosing Ice Queen. Plus, as a Sylph, she will gain more control over other elements, including her ice element. After all, becoming an Elemental Sylph meant access to all elements. Of course, all as in the ones she could use: Glacial, Metal, Lightning, and Shadow. There was also one more reason for her choice. If she had chosen to become an Ice Queen in order to reach the extremity of ice, that means she would slowly lose access to her Metal and Lightning attunement, which is needed for her Snowmancer class. As a class that she knew she could reach the apex with, she wasn't about to give up that chance. especially since she had another option that she could choose. Corrupted Elemental Sylph. Class Up Requirements. 0/4, Tier 3 Attunement in 4 elements. 3/1, 000, C-Class Mana Stones. 0/1, C Ranked Raid Completion with more than 30% contribution. 0/1, Fairy Element Core. 0/1, Corrupted Demon Core. Narrowing her eyes at the class up requirements, Shiro couldn't help but wonder where she'll get the Fairy Element Core. Unlike normal cores that you gain from fairies, the Element Core is a rare core that has an affinity with all the elements. From her memories, the drop of this item was mostly random. Not only that, but it was also harder to procure since not many people see this item, and even if they did, they would often keep this item to themselves due to the fact that it can boost elemental resistances. However, the Fairy Core wasn't the only troublesome requirement. The Corrupted Demon Core, much like the Fairy Element Core, is a rare drop that is gained through killing demon-type enemies. 2 extremely rare materials, AC Rank Raid and Tier 3 Attunements? Damn, Shiro muttered. What's wrong, Teach? Are the requirements hard? Lysandra asked as she chewed on the wyvern meat. I wouldn't say hard, just a little troublesome. Shiro smiled. Then I'm sure you can complete them. Lysandra grinned. Of course, who do you think I am? Shiro laughed lightly. As she grabbed one of the meat chunks that Lysandra had roasted, she briefly glanced over her stats since nothing had changed except for her stats. She hadn't gained any more skills or titles after reaching level 30. Name, Shiro. Level, 50. Class, Snow Girl Plus, Snowmancer. Race, Snow Girl, evolution criteria yet to be met. HP, 508, 750/508, 750. MP, 1, 065, 570/1, 065, 570. STR, 3350, plus 100. VIT, 3500, plus 200. INT, 7000, plus 750. AGI, 4550, plus 450. DEX, 4000, plus 100. DEF, 1200, plus 100. With her MP finally reaching the 1 million point threshold, she was able to unlock her sniper rifle creation, which was definitely going to be one of her strongest Snowmancer skills for a while. Say, Teach, I've always wondered, but what do you keep in that bag of yours? Lysandra asked as she pointed at Shiro's bag. In this? I keep my friend in my bag. She's just classing up right, so she's stuck in this form, Shiro said, pulling out Ian from her bag. Your friend? She's a close friend of mine. She nodded while stroking the egg. Placing it back into her bag, they chatted for a little longer before finishing their meal. Right then, we've got a whole day ahead of us for you to improve in using your aura coat, Shiro said as she stretched out her body a little. From the way things looked, she estimated that Lysandra should be able to become proficient in this by the end of the day. Not only that, they also needed to go out hunting demons tomorrow for her to gain more experience along with EXP to level up. ####. Twisting her body, Lysandra grabbed the demon's arm before kicking it in the stomach. *bang. The force the kick sent the demon flying upwards as she crouched down. Gathering her mana, she narrowed her eyes and activated her aura coat. *boom. Condensing into a thin layer of armor, she was able to enhance her physical attributes and launch herself towards the demon. Her sword started to glow with a golden light as her eyes lit up with the same color. Ha! Piercing the center of the demon's body with her sword, Lysandra twisted her wrist and caused an explosion of light within the demon's body. Clap, clap, clap. Not bad at all. Not bad. At all. Shiro praised. Thank you, Teach. But I'm guessing that you're going to reprimand me now. Lysandra sighed as she sat down and waited for Shiro's evaluation. Ho? Seems like you want me to reprimand you. Shiro grinned as she created a chair for her to sit on. Crossing her legs, she rested her chin on her hand and waited for Lysandra's reply. When have you not criticized me? Lysandra replied with a weary smile. Well, you're right. Anyways, on to the criticizing. First of all, body control. You were a little slow in exploiting his weak point. That's bad. In a high-intensity fight, a chance like that wouldn't appear often, so you must exploit it as much as you can. Second, aura coat. While the coat wasn't bad for your level, you want to be faster in creating the aura. When I was at your level, I would have been able to kill the demon much faster. Not to mention, I wouldn't need to chase it through the forest now, would I? Shiro said, gesturing at the damaged forest behind her. But Teach is special. Lysandra pouted slightly. So are you. Your class is most definitely stronger than my class, so there's no excuse. Plus, the only reason I say that is because of my mastery over mana and my own body. I can promise that if you were to train hard enough, you can do the same. Shiro encouraged. Naturally, she left the part about her title out since the monster title was truly broken. But are we able to do it within the time we're given? As you have said before, since the 3 generals are dead, war will break out soon. Are we able to get me up to standard before that time? Father, mother, and everyone else is pinning their hopes on me. I don't know if I can live up to that. Lysandra sighed as she started to draw on the ground with her finger. Looking at Lysandra, who was starting to feel the pressure of having the hopes of everyone on her shoulders, Shiro couldn't help but feel pity. As a person who had reached the apex of her world, she knew what it was like to have the hope of everyone on your shoulders. The feeling that you must not let them down was like a corrosive poison that will slowly eat away at you. If she just said, ignore them, that would just be lazy since she understood Lysandra's predicament. She wasn't able to say no since she felt like that was the wrong choice. A choice that would abandon them and leave them to die. One that wasn't befitting of a hero. Shiro narrowed her eyes as she looked up at the sky. Hero? What you're trying to be right now is a hero. However, it is also this thought process that's eating away at you. Lisa, I'll say this now. Heroes are nothing but a myth since there is no definite hero. While you may have saved a few people and are their hero, someone else who perhaps had just witnessed their close one die wouldn't see you as a hero. Trying to force an excuse that incapable people made up onto yourself will only harm you and not encourage you. Therefore, as your current teacher, my advice is to not be a hero, but rather be yourself. Lysandra, you are your own main character. Same goes with other people. It's just that their lazy nature made them a bad main character. By accepting their expectations onto yourself, you're trying to multitask with several stories at once, and the result of which would only destroy you slowly like a poison. Shiro said seriously. I guess. Lysandra nodded slightly. As I always say, don't worry about it. Don't live with stress, but allow yourself to relax. That's how you fully enjoy the experience of life. Plus, you also have your teach here, don't you? I'll help you fight in your war. Shiro grinned as she pointed at herself. Say, teach, how old are you? You speak as if you're an elder at times, and sometimes like a kid. Plus, well, your body's rather. Well, let's just say that even I got more curves than you. Lysandra asked as she pointed at her own figure. Oh, are you picking a fight with me? Shiro asked as her smile twitched slightly. No, I'm just a bit curious about how old Teach is. Lysandra waved her hands hastily since she knew the pain that would come if she fought Shiro. Body-wise, I would be around 13/14-ish, Shiro said looking at her body. But mentally I'm an adult. She continued, not willing to tell Lysandra her mental age since she's an adult. No more, no less. Eh? I want to know Teach's age, not just adult. Lysandra pouted. Fu. Remember this quote. Curiosity killed the cat. Therefore, I'm an adult, got it? Shiro smiled slightly. Shivering slightly from the smile, Lysandra quickly nodded her head. However, just as she was about to ask her another question, she saw Shiro turn her head towards their left. Seems like someone wants to intrude on our break. A demon type around level 45? No, level 50. Quite ballsy if I have to say so myself. Shiro smiled as she shook her head. How did you know the level and type of the monster? Also, shouldn't we attack it first before it attacks us? Lysandra asked. I know its level through estimating the kind of reaction I got from scanning him with my own mana. As for how I know the type of monster he is, you can see from the shape of their body. When you scan an area with your mana, you'll pick up reactions of foreign mana which is in the shape of the owner. I can see that the enemy has horns, wings, and an overall huge body physique. This means that the most likely outcome would be the fact that he's a demon. Give it a try. Shiro smiled. First, gather your mana into a small orb. Then, convert that orb into a pulse that sends a tiny wave of mana through the area. It should give you a rough idea of where everything is. Nodding her head, Lysandra closed her eyes and tried to recreate the effect. However, she wasn't able to succeed even after a few tries, which frustrated her. Don't rush it. The demon doesn't know that we've already found him. Take your time, Shiro encouraged. After a few more tries, Lysandra finally succeeded in sending out a pulse. Like a radar, her orb sent out waves after waves of pulses as a map of where everything is slowly started to appear in her mind. Unfortunately, the pulses were too strong and notified everything near them of her presence. Now this is a good time for me to teach you about this as well. As you can see, if your scan is too strong, it'll warn others of your location since they can track your mana back to you. Much like the aura coding, you want to condense your mana pulse so that it's barely detectable, she said as she flexed her fingers. Ice chains shot out of the ground and wrapped around the demon. With decent mana control, you'll be able to do things like this. Snapping her fingers, an ice spear appeared above her and shattered into hundreds of pieces of ice. Morphing themselves into tiny ice needles, they shot towards the demon and started to freeze him little by little with every hit. As the final needle landed on Demon's body, he shattered into a cloud of dust as if he was never there. Tada, Shiro grinned playfully. Lysandra didn't know what to say since she literally just witnessed Shiro kill a level 50 demon in an instant. Walking over to pick up the mana stone that dropped from the demon's body along with the loot, Shiro shook her head when she saw a normal demon core as part of the loot. I suppose it wouldn't be so easy now, would it? She thought to herself. Any questions? She asked as she sat back down. A few. Can you tell me the main areas of mana control that I need to work on so that I know what we're doing? Lysandra replied since so far, she knew she needed to learn aura and scan. The basics would be aura, scan, focus, defense, and direct mana manipulation, I guess. These are the foundations to all classes since they need mana in one way or another. And I'm guessing you want me to master all of them? Yup. And I have the best way for you to tap into your potential and achieve them. Only question is if you're willing or not. Shiro grinned. If anyone from her party saw her grin, they would instantly pale since they knew that grin all too well. It was the grin that promised a near-death experience in the form of training. I'm ready for anything you throw at me. Lysandra nodded her head. It's been roughly 2 weeks since Shiro had started to train Lysandra. Within the 2 weeks, Lysandra had made significant progress with her overall mana manipulation. Her strongest aspect had to be the way she used her aura coat. During this time, she was able to focus all her mana within a small area in order to create a stronger shock, one that would allow her to stun enemies with greater success. Of course, this was only achieved due to Shiro placing her in constant danger, which forced her to use these abilities in the heat of battle. Unfortunately, there was one aspect that she couldn't make any progress on no matter what: the rotational defense. If an attack landed on her aura coat with enough force, it would break through quite easily. A way to avoid this would be the rotational defense coat that would direct the attack around you, decreasing the stress on the mana coat. But since her attention was focused on maintaining the coat, she wasn't able to let it rotate. And when she did, the coat would become flimsy again. The most important part of these are multitasking. You need to be able to set your mind on a minimum of 3 things during the fight. 1. The fight itself. 2. Maintaining your coat. And finally 3. Rotating your coat. These are the bare minimum that you need to do at the same time for you to be effective on the battlefield, Shiro said as she demonstrated with her own mana coat. Looking at the mana that was rotating around Shiro like a flowing stream, Lysandra couldn't help but lay on her back. Teach. I can multitask with 2 things, but 3's pushing it a little, don't cha think? Especially since I've only started to improve on the basics since 2 weeks ago, she replied as she relaxed her body on the grass. I guess, but you can't make excuses for yourself. That will only hinder your progress. Shiro laughed as she handed Lysandra one of the last pieces of wyvern meat she had stored away. Sure, but I just can't seem to be able to multitask with 3 things. Do you have any tips? Lysandra asked as she sat up. Tips? I do have one, which is for you to dual wield while also keeping your mana code on. However, you're going to be fighting against swords that are using 2 different styles of attack, so you must keep an eye out for both. Oh, also, I'll be attacking you directly with mana, so your coat must be durable. Shiro smiled. If this works, then why not? Lysandra nodded her head. After 2 weeks of life and death training, she had gotten used to Shiro's ways. Nodding her head, Shiro tapped her necklace and summoned her swords. Get up when you're ready, she said with a small smile. Hang on. Grabbing the meat with both her hands, Lysandra started to devour the meat like a wild animal. You know what you look like right now, right? Shiro said as she could almost feel a sweat droplet rolling down her face. And? Training is more important than grace, Lysandra said without looking up. Done. She smiled after a short moment. Goodness. Well, at least this should help you digest the food. Shiro smiled wearily. Lysandra retrieved 2 swords from her own spatial bracelet and took a deep breath. Getting herself into a stance, she waited for Shiro to begin. Flexing her finger, Shiro sent 2 of her swords to attack Lysandra while she herself gathered a pulse of mana in her palms, ready to attack Lysandra's mana coat at any moment. Asterisk clang clang. Deflecting the 2 swords, Lysandra narrowed her eyes and activated her mana coat. Asterisk boom. The force sent the 2 swords flying back for a moment. However, they recovered quickly and shot towards Lysandra once more. The first sword used Azura Path while the second sword adapted to her movements and used a different style of attack. Gritting her teeth, Lysandra flicked her sword in a reverse grip and blocked the second sword. Now, Shiro thought as she pushed out her palm and sent a shot of mana towards her. Asterisk bang. Ping. Arg. The power of the mana shot easily destroyed her mana coat since her concentration had fluctuated the moment she blocked the sword. Again, Lysandra cried out as she flipped herself back on her feet. Nodding her head, Shiro sent the swords to attack her once more. Hashtag hashtag hashtag. We'll finish here for now, Shiro said as she looked at the barely standing Lysandra. Hi thud. Chuckling slightly, Shiro carried the fallen Lysandra and sat her up next to the tree. Today was the 3rd day of trying to get Lysandra to succeed in multitasking. While there was progress, Shiro guessed that it was a 30% chance for her to succeed since her coding would still fluctuate quite often. But baby steps. Right now, the day was split into 2 parts. In the morning, they would go out and hunt demons while at night, they would be sparring against each other. Just after 2.5 weeks worth of training, she had managed to raise Lysandra's level up to 36, while her own class up requirement has made some slight progress. 22/1-000 C-class mana stones. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to run into many C-class monsters, so she could only harvest 19 mana stones. Hopefully, there should be more C-class monsters in the war, she thought to herself. In addition to this, there was also the problem of reaching Tier 3 in her attunements. While she did have the pill in her inventory, she was barred from accessing it for now, so she could only wait. Asterisk sigh. What's wrong, Teach? Lysandra asked as she heard Shiro sigh. Nothing much, don't worry about it. I can see that you're troubled. It won't hurt to tell me now, would it? Lysandra replied. Well, I guess. I need a type of medicine, but I left it back in my house. I can't access it right now, so it's a little unfortunate. Shiro shook her head. If it's important, why didn't you take it earlier? Because the effects would be dulled. When ingesting the pill, I would suffer pain all over my body. Sure, I may be able to resist the pain, but after some point, the body would automatically shut down to protect itself against your will. And if I faint, the effects would be dulled. So I wanted to wait till level 50 in order to maximize my chances of staying conscious through the entire process. Shiro shook her head. Another question. Why do you need to eat the medicine in the first place? Lysandra asked. Because I damaged my body and I need the pill in order to repair it. Eh, that sounds like what happened to Father, Lysandra said as she widened her eyes. What do you mean? Well, I think Father was around level 100 before, but after his body was damaged, he reverted back to a level 50. Back then, I remember that his life was in danger and the doctors managed to get a pill that reconstructed his body slightly in order for him to keep his life. She replied with furrowed brows. Ho? What kind of pill was it? Shiro asked as her interest was piqued. I'm not sure. You'll have to ask Father when you see him again, but I'm sure that if he has any spare, he'll give it to you. Lysandra smiled. I see. By the way, do you know how your father was injured to begin with? She was curious as to why such a powerful person was reduced to a level 50. Lysandra furrowed her brows as she repeatedly opened her mouth and closed them, not sure if she should tell Shiro or not. If it's difficult, you don't have to tell me. No, it's fine. Basically, my elder brother injured Father. He was swayed by the demons and was converted over to their side. Lysandra sighed as Shiro paused in surprise. Is that why it's only you in the castle? Shiro asked since she wasn't able to find any of Lysandra's siblings. Yeah, I don't know what happened, but brother wasn't like that before. He was kind and caring though. Lysandra sighed. Shiro could see the sadness in her eyes and realized that their relationship must have been close for her to show this much sadness. You care for him even though he almost killed your father? Shiro raised an eyebrow. Well, I don't know. Lysandra shrugged her shoulders slightly. Just as Shiro was about to speak, she saw an update in her quest log. You've discovered the reason as to why the king was injured. Points added to final score. Huh. Seems like I got a bit lucky. Shiro thought to herself as she didn't think that finding out about who injured the king would increase her final score. Well, let's not think about that for now. Rest up well because we'll be invading an encampment tomorrow. Shiro smiled since she had detected movement towards the north of their current location a while ago. From what she could tell, they numbered around 200 demons strong. If my guess is right, this should be the scouting group. The demons should have gotten a new commander by now, and they're preparing for war. She thought with a slight frown. Sitting on one of the tallest trees, Shiro created a telescope and searched towards the north. Seems like they're making a camp. She narrowed her eyes. The situation was advancing quicker than she had expected since the moment they finished setting up camp, they'll be ready for war. If I go around destroying the camps with Lysandra, we should be able to increase the amount of time for her to train while also delaying the war for as long as we could, she muttered. Disassembling the telescope, she opened her bag and took it out. During the time that she had been training Lysandra, she noticed that runes were slowly appearing all over the surface of her egg. When will you hatch? She whispered. ####. Two demons on the right. Shiro said over the communication crystal that she had given to Lysandra, which in reality was only a tiny speaker and microphone encased in ice. While Lysandra was making her way through the camp and killing the demons that she saw, Shiro would point out the demons that she couldn't see. And if Lysandra wasn't able to react in time or couldn't reach a demon, she would finish them off with her magic. Since Lysandra couldn't see what she was holding, Shiro only told her that this was one of her most powerful magic, which was a complete lie. Eclipse Particle Cannon LVL-50 Rail Sniper, Purple Plus. Plus 2,500 attack. Plus 2,000 armor penetration. Plus 1,500 critical chance. Plus 1,000 critical damage. Plus 40% lightning damage. Plus 40% piercing damage. Passive skill, headshot, collateral damage, charge up. Headshot, increase damage and 100% crit when the bullet hits the head. Collateral damage, bullets that pierce multiple enemies would explode. Charge up, damage multiplier is applied when holding down the trigger to activate the particle accelerator. The sniper itself was black in color, red highlights along the edge of the plates, and had neon blue coils that protruded from the side of the sniper. The coils would gather the ambient mana and passively increase the power of each shot without burdening Shiro as much. Looking down the scope, Shiro saw a few demon bowmen pull back on their strings. Asterisk bang. Shooting the sniper from her vantage point, Shiro completely decimated the tower due to the fact that her bullet had pierced two bowmen and triggered her collateral damage skill. Holy crap, Teach. You've got to teach me that skill. Lysandra cried out in surprise, seeing Shiro wipe out an entire tower in one go. Focus on the task at hand. The boss is coming to you. Shiro replied over the mic. Flicking a switch on the side of the sniper, several magic circles formed around the coils and started to draw in more mana. *BZZZ. Lightning flickered off the sniper barrel as she could see the charge percentage slowly increase. While her damage multiplier was slowly increasing, she was spectating Lysandra's attempt at soloing the boss. Top-down swing in 2 seconds. Keep an eye on muscle movement. She advised over the mic. Parry the right slash then rotate into 2 uppercuts. As Lysandra fought the boss, Shiro would advise her about what the boss was doing in order for her to get used to fighting bosses. It proved helpful since Shiro didn't need to give as much advice later on since she could tell that Lysandra was fully absorbing her tips. Not only that, she was improving in regards to multitasking with 3 things. However, the stress was a little too much for her as she started to slow down and mistakes appeared more often. Not bad progress. Do you want to end this now and recover? There's always the next camp for you to fight a boss. Shiro asked. Yes, please. Lysandra replied in slight frustration. While she was getting into the zone, she also knew that her body was finding it hard to keep up. Okay, retreat as much as you can. Minimum of 50 meters. Shiro said while homing onto the boss's head. The current damage multiplier was 250%, more than enough to kill this boss in one go. Plus, he was only level 40. She was 10 levels above him. Once Lysandra retreated past the 50-meter mark, Shiro pulled on her trigger. *Bang. Lysandra only saw a thin line of white before she was launched back a little from the force of the bullet colliding against the ground. Wah! She cried out over the mic. Quickly landing on her feet, she looked up and saw the boss missing the majority of his upper torso. Holy *T, she muttered. Come back. We'll be heading to the next camp. Shiro chuckled as she disassembled the sniper and stood back up. As they continued to destroy the demon camps, Shiro managed to pseudo-level up due to the amount of bosses she killed during this time. This pseudo-level also allowed her to gain a rank, much like what had happened to her before. This time, she managed to gain the rank of General, which boosted all her stats by 10%. Shame that I can't keep this title once I class up, Shiro thought to herself. In addition to this, she had also managed to collect a total of 46 C-ranked mana stones. While it was still a far cry from the ridiculous target of 1,000, it was still progress. Can you take care of the boss? Shiro asked as she saw Lysandra hold her own pretty well against the boss of this camp. I can do it, Lysandra shouted out as she twisted her body and slashed the boss's wrist tendons, forcing him to drop the sword. Gritting her teeth, she flicked her sword up before kicking the pommel. *Poochie. Her sword stabbed through the boss's mouth and lodged itself tight. Making a small concentrated orb of mana, Lysandra narrowed her eyes and aimed it at the handle and crushed the orb. *Bang. The force of the orb exploding caused the sword to slash upwards, cleaving the boss's face in half. Unfortunately, when Lysandra tried to grab the sword, her hand missed the handle. Her eyes widened in shock as she couldn't do anything but watch the sword come closer to her face. *Bang. Ping! Just before the sword could hit her, Shiro's bullet snapped Lysandra's sword into several pieces. Heis! Shiro sighed as she looked away from the scope. The moment she saw Lysandra gather mana in her palm, she knew what she wanted to do, so she quickly simulated the possible travel courses of the sword and prepared to fire the moment the sword killed the boss. Are you angry? Lysandra asked timidly since she understood the danger she had just put herself in. I'm not angry, just disappointed. Of all the things you could have done, you picked the one that put you in the most risk. You're a fighter, not a clown. Why are you fighting like you're performing in a circus? Shiro asked. But don't you also do it? Lysandra pouted. Yes, because I've literally done it all my life. I'm confident enough in my body control to accomplish that almost perfectly every time. Are you the same? Shiro frowned. Heis, forget it. Just come back. Most of the camp leaders are now almost level 50. Seems like the demons are getting a little impatient. She shook her head and rested her sniper on her shoulders. Cracking her neck, Shiro threw a D-ranked mana stone lollipop in her mouth. Well, aren't you a sneaky bastard? She said as she flexed her fingers and created a hand cannon. Asterisk bang. Without even turning around, she shot her gun and killed the demon that was creeping up to her. Fan is huh? She muttered, seeing the type of demon that tried to kill her. As a demon that relied on assassination, her hand cannon that dealt armor penetration was lethal for him. Twirling the hand cannon, she disassembled it along with the sniper and collected the demon's mana stone along with his corpse. Sitting down on a tree branch, Shiro crossed her legs and closed her eyes as she waited for Lysandra to arrive. After a short moment, she heard some movement to her left and opened her eyes. Looking at Lysandra, who was stretching her body, Shiro hopped off the branch. Want to rest a bit, or go to the next camp now? She asked. Can we rest a little? Lysandra asked. Sure, but not here. A Fanas-type demon tried to ambush me just now, so this place is probably not safe. Shiro shrugged. While she could take care of them, it would mostly be troublesome since Lysandra needed to rest up. Nodding her head, Lysandra followed after Shiro. In the end, they decided to rest in the middle of the forest since the cover the trees provided them would be helpful. Since we've ran out of wyvern meat, we'll just eat some of this, Shiro said as she pulled out a few pieces of monster meat that she collected on the way here. As they were roasting the meat, Shiro paused in surprise when she felt her bag slowly heat up. Pulling out Een from her bag, she saw the runes glowing with a purple light. Is it about to hatch, Teach? Lysandra asked with anticipation. I hope so. Shiro smiled as she could feel the runes heat up in her hand. Frowning slightly, she placed it on the ground carefully. Asterisk TSSSS. The grass started to burn as the runes continued to heat up. The egg shook slightly as it started to roll towards the fire. Shiro didn't do anything to stop it since she understood that this was probably required. Shouldn't we stop it, Teach? It'll become dinner soon. Lysandra cried out, seeing Een rolling towards the fire. Just watch. Adjusting herself in the center of the fire, Mana started to roll off her shell and amplified the power of the fire. Maybe she wants it to be hotter? Shiro muttered in confusion. From what she could see, Een was actively increasing the temperature of the fire. I'll give you a hand. She smiled. Snapping her fingers, orbs of fire lit up around her as she slowly increased its intensity. The fire flickered for a few short moments before the color slowly changed to a bright white. SSSS. Gritting her teeth, Shiro resisted the heat and sent the fire towards Een. Asterisk boom. Yin's runes exploded with light the moment it came into contact with the flames. Step back, Shiro shouted out. She could feel Een holding back the mana from bursting out. Quickly retreating away from the fire that was growing out of control, Shiro released her ice aura to make things a little more comfortable for herself. Asterisk bang. A pillar of fire suddenly shot into the sky, rendering her ice aura useless. Quickly glancing down at her hand, Shiro narrowed her eyes when she saw steam being emitted along with her HP ticking away every second. Tisk, you're about to kill me at this rate. Shiro clicked her tongue. A blue glow appeared in her eyes as she slammed her hand down and used her ice domain skill. Asterisk KRRR. The area surrounding her instantly froze up and started to resist against the heat. Lysandra, who was spectating all of this, was having a hard time digesting this. Wasn't that your pet, Teach? Why is it attacking you? She asked. It's not attacking me. This is just a side effect from her evolution, Shiro replied as she noticed a change in the fire. A streak of black and purple cut the pillar of fire in half and started to contaminate the fire. Asterisk key ye. An ear-rupturing screech rang out as the flames started to morph into the shape of a bird. Wincing slightly from the cry, Shiro kept her eyes on the bird since she knew it was Een. Turning her head over, Een flapped her wings and flew towards them at astonishing speeds. Kii. Een cried out happily as she was finally out of the egg. Looking at Een, who was many times bigger than her, Shiro smiled wearily since she struggled to pat her head. Lee, nah, I can't call you little Een anymore, can I? Shiro chuckled. She wanted to stroke Yin's feathers, but decided against it for now since she could see black and purple flames flickering on the tips of her feathers. Een LVL 51. Dark Star Calamity, Phoenix. HP 2 000 000 /2 000 000. MP 5 000 000 /5 000 000. Skills: Dark Star Empowerment, Tier 3, Ice Chain, Tier 3, Shadow Cloak, Tier 3, Dark Star Calamity Magic, Tier 3, Rift Walker, Tier 3, Absorption/Redirection, Tier 2, Shadow Affinity, Tier 3, Dark Star Affinity, Tier 3, Dark Star Seraphim, Tier 3, Morph, Humanoid? Dark Star Calamity? Shiro muttered as she raised her eyebrows. Not only did most of her Shadow-type skills change into Dark Star versions, Een was also a part of the Phoenix race. Key. Een nodded her head happily. Unfortunately, a few of her skills weren't shared with her. Morph, Humanoid, Dark Star Calamity Magic? And even Absorption/Redirection was no longer shared with her. Thankfully, she was still able to use Rift Walker. Plus, she was also able to gain Tier 3 Shadow Attunement and Tier 3 Dark Star Attunement, which is a branch of Fire Attunement, from Yin's passive skills. A single class up with Een allowed her to progress massively with one of her class up requirements. 2/4, Tier 3 Attunement in 4 elements. Een, you can become a humanoid? Shiro asked, seeing Yin's skill. Een nodded her head again as a purple glow covered her body. Her form suddenly shrank down into the form of a young girl who was a bit smaller than Shiro. In the breast department as well, which brought Shiro great joy. She had black hair that was swept to the side and dark purple eyes. Her overall facial shape looked like a mix of Shiro and Fei Ling, whom was Shiro's attendant back in the Shadow Temple quest where she received Een. She wore a black and purple dress that contrasted with her skin. The dress itself had delicate patterns around the edges which almost made it seem like there were flames dancing in the dress. "Mom!" she cried out. "Hold the F***CK up." Shiro replied on impulse. "Mom!" Lysandra widened her eyes in shock. "Why did you call me Mom?" Shiro asked as she massaged her eyes. "Well, you fed me, hatched me, and even looked after me." Een smiled. "Does Mom not want me?" She teared up. You can drop back now, you little brat. As if I don't know what you're like from the times you've leeched off me." Shiro rolled her eyes. "But I'm not acting." Een pouted. "Ho ho, do you want me to recount the times that you've stolen my kills and ate all the mana stones I gave you in just a day?" Shiro rolled her eyes. "Fine, you got me." Een stuck out her tongue in playfulness. Jumping on Shiro, she sat on her shoulders and reached out her hand. "What do you want?" Shiro asked as she tried to pry Een off her shoulders to no avail. "Lollipop. And the first thing you want from me is food. God, you're still the glutton I knew. Kinda wish that part of you changed with your evolution." Shiro rolled her eyes. "I'm hungry, you know. I was stuck in that egg for weeks, and you were eating wyvern meat without me." Een pouted. Fine. But I need the C-classed mana stones for my class up. You better not eat them all, okay?" Shiro sighed and made a mana stone lollipop. "I won't, don't worry. It's become a snack now that I can gather some mana from the air." Een replied as she threw the lollipop in her mouth. Shaking her head, Shiro looked over at the shell-shocked Lysandra. "Lisa, can you hear me?" she called out. Yeah. Did she just call you Mom?" "Don't worry about it. Yin's just messing around." Shiro shrugged. Though she might as well be my mom since she treats me well," Een said with the lollipop in her mouth. "You're just too lazy. Now can you get off my shoulders?" Shiro asked as she looked up at Een. "Nope. This was my spot to begin with." Een replied with a shake of her head. Ever since she was born, Shiro's head and shoulders had been her territory. She wasn't about to relinquish her spot to others. "By the way, how do you want me to call you?" "Shirone like Kene. Shiro like everyone else, Mom or Master." She asked. Just Shiro, I guess? I see, I see. I'll call you Mom. In said with a sh*t-eating grin. Why did you even ask me to begin with? Why not? It's not like you're ever gonna have a child, are you now? Since I'm gonna be with you, why not just adopt me as your daughter? In suggested. Then again, even if you say no, I'm still gonna call you Mom. She continued. Heis. Shiro sighed. Mom, let's head to the next camp. I want to show you what I can do. In suggested. That's not a bad idea. Shiro nodded. Oh, but before I forget, why do you look a bit like Failing? Failing? I don't know who that is. In furrowed her brows. Never mind then. Probably your ancestor or something. Shiro smiled lightly. Since she had infused Een with a droplet of her blood before she was even born from the egg, it was only natural that Een would take some of her features. But for her to also have Fei Ling's features meant that she was part of her bloodline, which only led Shiro to ask the question of why that was the case. She already knew that time was a bit strange inside the dungeon since one day in here was only 1 hour out there. It wouldn't be surprising if a dungeon had the time dilation of a few generations. If the dungeons had a link to Aria, my old world, it wouldn't be unnatural for it to have connections with other worlds. Which means there is perhaps a chance for me to make it back to my world and kill the light hero. Shiro thought with a frown. Mom, you might want to lower your killing intent a bit. This baby is sensitive to ice. Een reminded. You're sensitive to ice? What about me? I'm literally weak to fire because I'm a snow girl right now, and your steamy *** is on my shoulders. Think about how I feel. Shiro retorted with a roll of her eyes. It's fine you got my dark star affinity, don't you? You should be more resistant to fire now. Een dismissed lightly. Can I disown this unfilial daughter? As they made their way through the forest, towards the next camp, Shiro was currently checking the changes brought to her own body due to Yin's evolution. The biggest change was certainly the fact that she now had a fire-type attunement. Unfortunately, it seemed like she could only enhance her skills with the element rather than create skills with the element as the main component. An example would be her Ice Drake's Feast. If Een were to try to recreate the skill, she could be able to reconstruct the entire Drake out of her Dark Star element. On the other hand, if Shiro were to try the same, all she could accomplish would be to include orbs of Dark Star around the Drake to deal more damage. Another problem was that she still took a little bit of damage from the fire. Sure, she may have the attunement and some resistance to fire, but it didn't mean she was no longer weak to it. So using the Dark Star element was advised against for now, since it was a double-edged sword. Of course, things would change once she classed up. She would gain an overall increase to elemental resistance, along with removing some of her innate weakness as a snow girl. Not to mention, she was still allowed to keep her Ice Princess title, meaning her ice magic was still empowered. Obviously, if she was to lose access to her ice magic, the title would disappear as well. Flexing her fingers, Shiro summoned a small flicker of Dark Star element so that she could see what it looked like. The flame was a mixture of black and purple along with some white dots that made it seem like it was made from a galaxy. Seeing Shiro play around with the new flame, Een stuck her head forward and blew the flame gently. You know, Mom, if you're curious about what it can do, you can just ask me, right? Fine, I'll entertain you. What does it do? Shiro smiled lightly. Fufu, the Dark Star flame can consume other fire elements and empower itself to burn harder. When I hatched from my shell a second time, a single spark of the dark fire was able to consume the entire pillar of fire. If Mum didn't send more fire, I might not have gotten this many benefits. Een said as she relaxed herself on Shiro's shoulders. Oi, don't relax too much. You're gonna fall. Shiro reminded. You can hold me tighter so that I don't fall. This baby is tired. I was just hatched not too long ago. Een grinned. Ho, didn't you say you want to demonstrate your power? If baby is tired, then how can you demonstrate your power? Shiro raised an eyebrow. Asterisk cough, asterisk oh wow. I'm suddenly filled with power. Let's hurry, Mum. Een said as she instantly sat up straight. She wasn't about to miss out on the opportunity of showing off to Shiro now, was she? Lysandra giggled slightly at Yin's antics while Shiro only rolled her eyes. At least she ain't a baby, she thought to herself. If Yin's humanoid form was that of an infant who couldn't talk, she didn't know what she would do. "Oh, I see the camp," Yin called out. "Let's stop here then. If you show off when I'm near, I'm pretty sure that I'm gonna melt." Literally. Fine. I don't need to be in human form for this anyways. Yin shrugged as she hopped off Shiro's shoulders. Landing softly, she closed her eyes as a purple phoenix mark slowly appeared in the center of her forehead. "By the way, Mom, how much of my power do you want to see?" Yin asked. "Well, a decent amount, I suppose." Shiro smiled. "Got it." Purple flames wrapped around Yin's body as she shot into the air. Asterisk key. Spreading her wings, Yin gathered the surrounding mana. Asterisk boom. A Tier 3 magic circle suddenly appeared above the camp. Asterisk key. Following her cry, the magic circle glowed with an ominous light. Hundreds of orbs started to form around her as she flapped her wings and sent the orbs flying towards the camp. Embadio. Asterisk boom 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 boom. The scene was reminiscent of a meteor storm. Even Shiro was taken aback by the power that Yin demonstrated with a single spell. However, this was just the beginning. Once the orbs crashed against something, they would ignite into a giant fire tornado that started to run rampant around the camp. The flames started to converge towards the center as Shiro felt a large cluster of mana being sucked towards the convergence point. OSH*T. Get down. Shiro shouted out as she quickly grabbed Lysandra and made an ice wall to protect them from the heavy gust of wind that would follow after the huge body of mana detonates. Asterisk boom. Once all of the flames converged in the middle, they started to merge and send out waves after waves of dark star fire around it. After a short moment, there was nothing left of the camp par from the giant crater that made it look like a bomb had just landed on the camp. Asterisk key. Crying out happily, she made her way back to Shiro. Shifting her body in midair, she landed with a soft tap. "How was that, Mom?" Yin asked as her eyes showed that she was clearly expecting praise. "Impressive. But how much mana did it use?" Shiro replied as her smile twitched slightly. Not that much." Yin coughed lightly. "You know I can check myself, right?" Shiro raised an eyebrow. "Mom, believing in your baby is an important step in parenthood, you know? Benefit of the doubt?" Heis. Sighing slightly, Shiro patted Yin's head. Yin thought that Shiro was about to believe her without checking as she felt slightly emotional at the fact that she was indeed giving her the benefit of the doubt. "Mom," Yin said emotionally. However, that was soon changed as she paled from feeling Shiro's grip tighten instantly. "You little sh*T. Did you just use 3 million MP on AF*King demonstration?" "Ah," Shiro said as her aura took a complete 180-degree turn. Just looking at Yin's current stats gave her urge to give Yin's head a slap. "Oh, go easy on this baby's head. I'll lose my IQ at this rate." Yin cried out as she tried to get Shiro to let go of her head. "Huh? IQ? Where's the IQ when you decided to use 3 million MP for a single spell? I can see your debuff, you know?" she said whilst tugging on Yin's cheeks. T-. Hush, Lisa. I'm gonna teach this unfilial daughter how not to be a dumbass," Shiro said, cutting her off mid-speech. "First, your skill is a Tier 3 advanced destruction magic from what I can see. This kind of skill is used to finish off a fight, not start one. I can see that you have a debuff called mana fatigue that lasts for 5 hours. You decided to use a spell that made you almost useless for 5 hours? What are you thinking?" Shiro berated. Letting go of Yin's cheeks, she massaged her eyes. "If you're going to demonstrate, at least show what you can do in a 1v1 situation and not just bombing the whole area." Shiro continued as she glanced back at the teary eyes Yin. "But didn't you tell me to show you a decent amount of my power? This isn't my best skill, you know, so it's still classed as decent. Plus, you never told me to go for 1v1s. Yin pouted as she rubbed away her tears. Pausing for a short moment, Shiro suddenly had the urge to say, "Listen here, you little sh*T. Heis. Forget it. Come on, we'll go to the next camp. Since you have the debuff, you're going to watch us for the next 5 hours," she said as she helped Yin stand up. Imph, give me another lollipop. This baby's emotional state is in turmoil because of you. In huffed whilst climbing back on Shiro's shoulder. Fine here. Shiro rolled her eyes as she handed in another C-class lollipop. You really are embracing your role as a mother, aren't you, Teach? Lysandra raised an eyebrow. Of course. It's because this baby is cute and Mum can't resist me. Een grinned. As if. Shiro smiled lightly as she knocking Een on the head. See? Playful affection. Een said while rubbing her head. Just ignore it, Shiro, and it'll be fine, she thought to herself as they made their way to the next camp. Splitting up once more, Shiro created her sniper and laid down on a high vantage point. Say, Mum, is Lysandra like Lyrica? Een asked as she squatted next to Shiro. What do you mean? Shiro replied without turning her head. Well, you teach her how to fight and look after her. Kinda like what you do with Lyrica. I guess. But it's more for the quest than anything. Shiro shrugged slightly as she shot one of the demons that Lysandra failed to hit. How is that so? Oh yeah. When are you going to open up to Lyrica and the others? We can't hide the fact that we're monsters for long, Mum. Een asked as she lay on her back. Shiro stayed silent. Or is Mum scared? What are you trying to say, Een? Shiro frowned slightly. I may be a baby, but I'm still intelligent, you know? You're always hesitating about showing off your powers in front of others, even in dangerous situations. Why's that? I suppose it's okay if you know. So you know how I got you from a different world? Yeah, and that Mum's a snow girl but is also something else at the same time. Een nodded. From as far back as she could remember, she had always seen Shiro use metal to create all kinds of stuff. She knew it wasn't metal magic since it felt different and foreign. It felt off. Well, it's my second class. Snowmancer, a class from my past life. The one I had before I died. Shiro confessed since Een was going to be with her till death. Literally. Wait, what? Mum died once already? Een widened her eyes in confusion and shock. Yeah, I was a little surprised as well. But ignoring that, the cause of my death was in the hands of someone who I had once recognized as a friend. He saved me from my prison and gave me freedom in a way. But because I was too powerful and surpassed him to become the first one in our world to become a Tier 6 legend, he decided to turn his sword against me. Normally I would win, but he created a device to exploit my weaknesses. But now that I know that dungeons are connected, there is the chance that I can visit Arya in the future. Shiro narrowed her eyes at the thought of revenge. Her only hope was that she could kill the real him with her own hands, and not a simulation-type setting like this quest. From her own estimations, she guessed that the quest had a pool of rewards for first clears or ranks. For Yuan Tian to be able to leave, that meant that the main characters in quests could be taken out in a way. Another example would be Een. She believed that she was the first one to clear the Shadow Temple quest to that degree, hence she was rewarded with Yin's egg. But if someone else managed to clear the quest to the same grade before her, there would be no way that Shiro could have received Een. Which means that if I can find a quest that led back to Arya, there's a chance that no one had killed the hero yet. But dungeons are inconsistent. I can't guarantee that I will be able to arrive in the same time frame. The best way would be trying to move into the world manually. If I can be reborn in a new world, the reverse should also be possible. Mum, if you're not careful you might fall. Een warned. Fall? Shiro paused hearing the word. Your name's turning black, Mum. I don't know what it means, but something is telling me that once it becomes permanent, you'll fall. Een said, sitting up straight. There was no more signs of playfulness as Shiro knew that Een was being serious. I'll try. Shiro nodded her head after seeing Yin's concern for her. Crawling on her back, Een sighed as she buried her face into Shiro's hair. When your name turns black, it's eerie, Mum. She muttered as her breathing became rhythmic. After a few short moments, Shiro realized that Een fell asleep. She really is tired, she thought with a soft smile. Flexing her fingers, she created a bedsheet and covering Een inside it. Since she had created it using nanofiber, she didn't have to worry about it being uncomfortable. Gently laying her beside her, Shiro created a pair of earmuffs that blocked out the sound so that her gunfire won't startle Een. So whenever I think of killing the light hero, my name turns black, and it risks me falling, huh? Shiro thought with narrowed eyes. She had a few theories in mind, but that was it. They were theories and nothing more.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.